This meeting to order. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, The Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Councilman Hache.
Here.
Councilman Seaton.
Here.
Councilman Voigt.
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh.
Here.
Mayor Knudsen.
Here. Please stand for the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join us in a moment of silence for our men and women serving our nation, our first responders, and all victims of needless and senseless violence. Thank you.
That I'm glad that you didn't follow my opinion, because in doing that, I would have a village council that would have given weight to the opinions of some and therefore ignoring the opinions of many. And I am grateful for a group that doesn't do that, and I wanted to thank everyone up there. And I particularly would like to thank our mayor and our deputy mayor. I feel ashamed that I haven't come here sooner, because as a resident, I find the ability to feel that the community can be brought together on these issues instead of bickering of such great value. Tonight, we're going to be able to agree on something. We're going to be able to agree to disagree on something, and then we're going to be able to move on, get something done. And I really just wanted to come here and finally, instead of streaming it online in my kitchen, say in person a hearty thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? It's a quiet public comment. Good evening.
Good evening. Rorick Halliday, 374 Evergreen Place. 5 items. First, Councilman Hache should be censured by the council for the robocall sent out.
I'm going to call a point of order. Comments in general, not directed at anyone.
I am directing my comments to the council as a whole about the activity of one of your members, who in my opinion should be censured. Okay? Because he sent out this robocall officially as a council member, slandering Mr. Hans-Jürgen Lehmann. Mr. Hache basically called Mr. Lehmann a liar for the voters' remorse mailer that Mr. Lehmann
and
sent
he was
out.
correct when he did that.
Some of us might agree.
You are out of order, sir, because you are interrupting me.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay, Mr. Halliday,
Yeah.
just Mr. Lehman is here. He certainly can speak for himself.
You don't have to tell me what to say.
I'm going to call a point of order, because you shouldn't even really be referring to another resident in your public comments. So kindly
When?
you shouldn't be referring to a member of the public. All right,
I think if we let him finish his comments, I think it'll go a little bit
Go
smoother.
ahead, continue. You can continue, Mr. Halliday, go on.
Thank you. Now, will you be quiet, please? Because Mr. Hache basically called Mr. Lehmann a liar for the voter remorse mailer that Mr. Lehmann sent out. Hache states, I read it with disbelief because none of it is true. Repeat, none of it is true, meaning it was all lies. Mr. Lehmann's thesis was fully documented. And I challenge Mr. Hache and anybody else to show me where any of the statements were not true. The most egregious statement on Mr. Hache's robocall was when he states, quote, to accuse Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church, where I'm a parishioner, of somehow colluding with Susan Knudsen was a new law in politics. Now, never did Mr. Lehmann charge Mount Carmel with colluding with the mayor. Mr. Lehman's point, which is one I share, is that the mayor should have returned the $25,000 raffle winnings to the church. This was not a lottery, it was a raffle for a charitable organization. And the optics, considering the position the mayor took on the Hudson Street garage, which apparently was a hot issue at the church, did not reflect well on the ethics of the council. 2. Second, the mayor insulted Alexander Harwin by referring to Ms. Harwin as a purported lawyer. Does the mayor know the meaning of the word purported? Yes, Ms. Harwin is a lawyer, and a distinguished one to boot. Which makes me think, speaking of purported, the mayor resume in the League of Women Voters website says the mayor was, quote, COO of a multi-million-dollar corporation. Could someone tell me what multi-million-dollar corporation the mayor was COO of? Also, the mayor insulted Ms. Harwin by saying that Ms. Harwin was ethically and morally challenged. I wonder if the mayor, speaking from a dais, as an elected official and running for re-election, can use her position as mayor to insult someone running against her. Third, the mayor and her followers would want us to believe that the village was required by state law to give priority to residents in public safety jobs. The village has the option to have such a requirement, but it is not required by state law to do so. My understanding of the debate which took place at the council in summer of 2014 was whether to keep the requirement village employees, public safety and otherwise. The vote was to keep it for public safety employees but not others. The fact there was a debate means, ma'am, would you like to answer or can I talk without you gesticulating?
I'm going to continue shaking my head in disbelief at these lies.
Lies? What lies, ma'am? If you're calling me a liar, you have
Point of order. Mr. Hallaby, I'm going to stop you, Mr. Hallaby.
Yes,
I am calling a point of order, and if you don't stop...
Stop what?
If you don't... Thank you. Your time is up.
My time is not up because you interrupted me.
You can have a seat, Mr. Hallaby.
If you listen to the tape of these
Mr.
meetings...
Hallaby,
ma'am, you took out my
Please
point.
sit down, Mr. Hallaby.
She took up a lot of my 3 minutes.
Mr. Hallaby.
I think the record will show that at a particular point in time, you were interrupted earlier, but then you asked a direct question of the mayor and asked her if she wanted to answer. So that was the interruption. So if you have a few more comments, I would just say finish them up quickly.
Thank you.
Or please sit down.
Thank you. I'll have a few more comments to finish quickly. If you listen to the tape of the Village Council meeting of July 4th, 2014, you'll hear the mayor, then just a council member, advocating strongly to maintain the requirement for public safety employees.
This sounds like it's going to be a lot more than a few.
You know, I'm going to object.
Okay.
I'm going to
Okay.
stop. It's
Okay.
ridiculous,
Thank
the
you.
whole thing. All right.
Next up.
Hunter Lehman, 234 Union Street. At a recent council meeting, the mayor referred to Mr. Rogers as her attorney. Unless she is paying Mr. Rogers a separate retainer, a serious ethical violation all by itself, I believe that Mr. Rogers is paid by the residents of this village through the real estate taxes they pay. As such, his job is to represent the residents on this council and to make sure that the council performs its duties as prescribed under law. Secondly, I would also like to raise the point that the mayor's speech at the April 11th council meeting sounded suspiciously like a campaign speech. If you need to defend yourself against certain accusations during re-election campaign, there is a time and a place for that. A council meeting is neither that place nor that time. And Mayor Knudsen, during council time, the people's time, referring to one of your election opponents, and I quote, I would advise anybody running for village council who purports to be an attorney is both morally and ethically challenged. There is no purporting about that candidate's qualifications as an attorney. Talk about campaigning on the village's dime. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Okay, with that, first, we'll close public comments, and before Mr. Rogers starts, I'm going to address a couple of the comments that have been made. For the record, for the umpteenth time, the ethics violation that was filed against me by your group, was dismissed by the state of New Jersey. There was no raffle ever held or supported by Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church. The raffle ticket I purchased was for a raffle at Academy of Our Lady School in Glen Rock, New Jersey. The church, it's a sister school to the church and has nothing to do with the church. Furthermore, the suggestion, and it is there in the writings, that there was collusion to rig a raffle to pay me off for stating the obvious that everyone else on planet Earth knew, that the garage was too big, is a remarkable accusation against the Catholic Church, and one that each and every one of you should be ashamed of yourselves for addressing. Nope, you can sit down, Mr. Hallaby. Mr. Hallaby, sit down. Number 2, if you want to put words in my mouth, that's exactly what you're doing. You have perpetrated a fraud on the Ridgewood residents. There is no doubt about it. You take a document and told people to go to a period on a YouTube video stream where I state, I don't understand why we want to take jobs away from Ridgewood residents. Our residents know our streets. They know our neighborhoods. They can unlock Village Hall in the event of an emergency. You wrote the line that I was advocating strongly for police and fire. But if you told people to slide that slider on that YouTube video just 2 minutes before, the village manager is heard saying the discussion excludes public safety titles because, in fact, in the statutory framework, we do not have the authority to change what is a requirement because we are formed under Civil Service Title 11A as a civil service community. Mr. Rogers is going to speak to that. We have a requirement by New Jersey statute to maintain a residency preference shown for public safety officials. Now, when the two of you decide to hang your law shingle outside your front doors, let us all know. Because right now, Mr. Rogers is going to speak to it. I'm going to speak to the next item because as long as we're here and we're all having a nice little neighborhood conversation and we're acting civil about it, we're going to go to the next thing. I have celebrated every single one of my birthdays for the last 10 years, donating my money, volunteering my time and services to the Jamboree Need-Based Scholarship Fund. I have never charged or made any money. I have given money. I have helped raise thousands of dollars for a need-based scholarship program directly benefiting our high school students who couldn't otherwise afford to go to college. The suggestion that I profited off of this is an outrage, and it's disgusting after a while. And the last one we'll go to is the coloring book that I'm using to indoctrinate children, 2nd and 3rd graders, into the mayoral whatever. This is not a coloring book. It's a two-sided sheet of paper. On my time, on my free time, I am required to do village hall tours for 3rd graders and 2nd graders and scouts. I developed what's called Color with the Mayor with a government word search on the back of it to reinforce the lessons that we learn when we're in this courtroom. The children are then sworn in after we use all those government terms. They are sworn in officially. I administer the oath of office, and they are sworn in as wonderful, kind, decent, civil 2nd and 3rd graders, that they treat people the way they want to be treated. And the teachers are given a packet that they bring to their classes to reinforce those government terms: agenda, minutes, budget, counsel, lawyer, attorney, manager, chiefs. It's a word search. And yes, was I generous to myself with the image on the front of the sheet? Absolutely. The kids don't really think it looks like me, but I'm pleased as punch that I have this little Color with the Mayor. This is the coloring book used to indoctrinate children. Hans, you should be ashamed of yourself. From start to finish, the whole thing is a lie and a fraud, and you've defrauded the people, the good people of Ridgewood, and I stand by my statement that anybody who's advancing these lies is morally and ethically challenged, and I include you. Now, Mr. Rogers is going to speak to the rest of it. You're not permitted to get up again, Hans. Sit down. Hans, sit down. Hans, sit down, point of order. Hans, sit down, I'm going to have you removed from this courtroom, Hans. Hans, you should sit down. Hans, I'm having the police come to remove you. Hans, point of order, Mr. Lehman. Mr. Lehman, point of order. Point of order. Mr. Lehman, point of order.
Point of order.
Mr. Lehman, I'm having you removed. I'm contacting the Sergeant of Arms and having you removed from this courtroom. If you... It does, Mr. Lehman,
Had your chance. Point of order.
sit down, Mr. Lehman, or leave. Sit down or leave. If you think I'm going to sit here any longer and spend 40 hours a week on behalf of this village while you send a mailer to every single home or to whomever and distribute email that is baseless lies, I am not going to tolerate it anymore. I will not tolerate it any longer, Hans. I will not tolerate it, and I will also not tolerate you politicizing the Board of Adjustment. Enough. Enough. Enough.
Point of order. Can we all calm down and move on with this meeting, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Matt.
I think if we all take into perspective what we're here for and what we're trying to do here in terms of running the government, I think everybody should calm down a bit. But if everyone remembers, at the council meeting on April 11th, 2018, I was requested to prepare a memorandum regarding the relationship between the civil service hiring process and residency preferences as a condition of employment in the village. And it's recognized that as part of this discussion, it may involve consideration of an ordinance that precludes nepotism in the hiring process in the village. As I believe everyone is aware, I'm not the village labor attorney for a number of reasons, most importantly due to the potential conflicts of interest in litigation matters. Having to defend and represent individual village staff and departments in litigation matters and the possibility of having to deal with discipline issues concerning staff personnel. Additionally, during my tenure as village council, I have provided legal advice to the council, the village manager, individual council members, department heads, individual staff, represented departments and individuals in litigation as needed as requested. This requires providing individual legal advice, which is confidential, to any person who has either requested or under circumstances in which I believe it's warranted and helpful. This is only provided to assist the individual in each one's capacity as a village employee and not provided to anyone for personal purposes. As a matter of law and ethics, I cannot represent a council member on anything that does not involve their position as a member of the council. My task was helped in this memorandum by contacting the village labor attorney. He deals with these issues concerning civil service and employee hiring practices on a regular basis. Although I can research the issue presented, which I did, research doesn't provide all the insight and understanding in dealing with such matters on an everyday basis. There's no substitute for experience. The response and conclusion of the labor attorney is that civil service laws and procedures were adopted by the state legislature to provide employment opportunities for the most qualified persons by testing and the application of other criteria to make other considerations, and to remove politics, nepotism, and favoritism, and make them arbitrary considerations and take them out of the employment decisions. Its design was to require that employment, particularly the hiring process, be based on merit so that citizens could rely on having the best possible workforce in local government. By imposing a merit-based hiring process, which is civil service, which Ridgewood had chosen many years ago, the applicable process under civil service factors out nepotism or residency and may be considered by local government entities. Civil service law and statutes provide that candidates for civil service positions can only be bypassed or deemed ineligible for reasons specifically provided in the law. It does not allow candidates to be bypassed as a result of familiar relations or a local anti-nepotism policy. As a result, bypassing or precluding a candidate who has qualified to be on the eligibility list for a specific civil service position because of a familiar relationship would run counter to applicable civil service regulations and would subject the village to litigation or legal challenges to any position filled in accordance with such a policy. The likely outcome of such a challenge would require the municipality to hire or appoint the individual to the position sought, back pay for the time from the non-hiring date to adjudication, and the payment of legal fees of that individual. In addition to receiving that opinion from the village labor attorney, I researched several court decisions pertaining to the enforcement of civil service regulations and complaints wherein an eligible candidate was bypassed due to political and other reasons that are not expressly permitted in the civil service law. In each instance, the Appellate Division of the Superior Courts of New Jersey ruled that bypassing an eligible candidate can only happen in accordance with the reasons prescribed in the civil service law and regulations. In rendering the opinions I researched, the appellate courts reasoned that the minimum requirements for the position on a civil service test must be announced before the test is given. That has to be established by the Department of Personnel of the state. The scope and the requirements that applicants must meet are also established by the Department of Personnel, and they have to be specified in the examination announcement. It's the Department of Personnel that certifies the names of the candidates who can be included on the eligibility list. The courts have also ruled that any discretion that might be exercised by a local government unit in the hiring process, such as the rule of three, may not be exercised in a manner inconsistent with merit considerations. The courts of New Jersey have long held that all civil service appointments must be made made according to merit and fitness to be ascertained as far as practical by the examination for the position. In other words, the test. As a result of this additional research I performed, I agree with the opinion of Labor Council that any regulations restricting hiring for civil service positions based on familiar relations run counter to civil service law and would likely subject the village to litigation if adopted and utilized. The Village Council is without authority to change the civil service regulations and law, and the manner in which those regulations are applied to the hiring of candidates for civil service positions in the village, including residency preferences.
Thank you. So, I am going to waive my attorney-client privilege on this matter, and I am going to post this document so that everyone can understand that this village council has no part in the hiring process, and that we are formed under Title A, New Jersey Department of Personnel, Civil Service, and as such, we comply and strictly adhere to those laws. If anyone else has anything?
I would just like to add that I think the misinformation that is being spread around by a certain group and unnecessarily dividing this community and taking away from what's important, which is the issues, needs to stop. Thank you.
Matt, I'm a little confused. I mean, I looked at the municipal hiring of police and fire departments. It's NJSA 40A.14-10, 1A, and 123.A.
Yeah,
And the wording is as follows, and this is where I'm a little confused. It says, in any municipality of this state, before any person shall be appointed as a member of the police department and force, the appointing authority, i.e. the municipality, may classify all the duly qualified applicants for the position or positions to be filled in the following classes. Residents is 1, other residents of the county is 2, other residents of the state is 3, etc. We're not required to follow that statute, are we?
The civil service statute?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Well, it says may classify. Okay.
Matt, do you mind, do you mind 1 minute? Because I just want to explain to Mr. Voigt, Councilman Voigt, that he fails to read the entire statute, and if he just goes down to a subsection where it forms under
let him finish what he's
11A,
doing.
please explain to him the law.
Let me finish. So that's where I'm a little confused, is it says we don't have to do this, right? We can choose to do it, and that's what we did. We chose to do it.
The villages chose a long time ago to be a civil service hiring community for police and fire. Once you adopt that, you follow that until you decide not to do it any longer. So if there is a choice to be made, it's somewhere down the line, but right now, and for the last number of, I don't know how many years, long before I got here, we were a civil service community for police and fire. So, and again, I'm not a labor attorney, but we have to follow it because that's what the choice is.
So can we, I mean, this seems to be a hot issue, to be honest with you. I mean...
It's only a hot issue
with the
because
community.
some people are making it a hot issue. It's a non-issue.
Let the speakers finish, please.
Yes, please. Thank you. So you're not a labor attorney, you said? Okay.
I am not the town's village's
Okay,
labor
so can at least we figure that out? I mean, because this...
Well, there's
this
nothing you
isn't
can
a-
do.
I can answer it, if you would let me answer it. In section C of that same statute, it says, "In any such municipality operating under the provisions of Title 11A of the New Jersey statutes," that's civil service, "the classes of qualified applicants defined in subsection A of this section shall be considered a separate and successive list of eligibles, and the Civil Service Commission shall, when requested to certify eligibles for positions specified in this section, make such certifications from said classes separately and successively." So what those classes were, as a reminder, are residents of the municipality, other residents of the county in which the municipality is situate, other residents of the state, and then all other qualified applicants. So it has to go through it successively. And then it says, "and shall certify no persons from any such class until all persons in the preceding class or classes have been appointed or have declined offers of appointment." So that indicates that under civil service, which is what we are, that this is what we have to do. So therefore, we have to start with residents, then go to other residents of the county of Bergen, then go to other residents of the state, and then all other qualified applicants, although, because this was, there is an update to that, because New Jersey First was enacted by Governor Christie when he was in office, and that means that only residents of New Jersey can be hired. So it wouldn't be other qualified applicants. So I just wanted to point out that that's actually section C of that same statute that you were reading.
Thank you, Heather.
I don't know if you're still confused, Jeff, but I can certainly talk to you. But we are civil service for
Yeah.
police and fire, and that's required that we follow the statute and that preference with regard to the hiring process.
So I'd still feel better if we had a labor attorney look at this. I'll be honest with you. I mean, because I'm confused, and I think the residents are confused as well.
Jeff, you know what, I'm going to say, let me jump right in here, because there's no confusion unless you're looking to confuse people. The statute and that subsection is very clear.
I'm not
Unless you're
aware.
out there looking to advance something. I'm going to say something else, Jeff, so just give me a minute. My sons took a civil service test. They qualified, they ranked highly on that test before I ever ran for village council. The year before I ran for village council, the state of New Jersey ranked them and certified that list and delivered it to the village manager on May 6th, days before I was even elected. The fact that my one son was a volunteer firefighter for 7 years, he went into burning buildings for 7 years, and when he took the civil service fire test, he was the second top scoring candidate. I have one son who has a degree in criminal justice. This whole attack, this team smear campaign to malign me has not only an attempt to impugn my reputation, but it's also libelous. I'll tell you right now, it is libelous. And I am no longer going to sit back and tolerate this. Not on a campaign for any election, not on any day of the week am I going to tolerate this team smear campaign against me and my family. It's going to end now, and we are going out with the truth. We are formed under Title A. We are required to have these preferences as defined in the statutory framework. That is how it is. Nothing here is confusing for anyone, Jeff, and we are so sorry if you're confused.
Well, Mayor, you're not a lawyer, number one. You're not a labor attorney. All I'm asking for is for us to get an expert opinion as to whether or not this is the correct thing. That's all I'm asking for.
And it's not me that decides, it's the council that decides, but don't forget, because I'm not the labor attorney, I did contact the labor attorney before putting the memo together, and I read into the record what his opinion was in regard to this, and that he stated that the civil service statutes were adopted for the particular purpose of basing hiring on merit, and that it should be based on merit so that citizens could rely on having the best possible workforce. And by utilizing that process, the process factors out nepotism.
Well,
So,
can I ask
because
you a
it doesn't give it any type of a preference.
So when you say merit, what do you mean by that?
The testing process.
Okay, so the testing process, so is it rank the people, the testing process?
Depending upon how you do on the test, it gets reviewed by the state, and you get ranked.
Okay, so if that testing process has been modified, okay, and we've modified it based on one of our ordinances.
No, it doesn't get modified by us. We're not allowed to modify it. The testing process is
Well,
established.
no, it sure does. We have ordinance 3429, which basically says that people of residence, they go right to the top of the list.
No, not for civil service, though, Jeff. So that's the distinction.
So, I'm talking about public, I'm talking about,
You can't be talking about police and fire.
I am talking about police and fire.
Well, the civil service test for police and fire is really administered by the state.
Okay.
We don't do that. And we don't have the authority to change, we don't have the authority to change those.
So if you're not at the top of the list.
Right.
Okay, and we changed our ordinance to make sure some people were at the top of the list.
No, we did not. When did that ever happen?
3429.
No, it's got nothing to do with it, Jeff. I mean,
Sure it does.
Put it this way, you can get the labor attorney in here to tell you that, but you're talking apples and oranges.
I'm sorry. I think we need a labor attorney, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think you're off base on it, but you can, if the council wants to get the labor attorney in here, you're more than welcome to do it.
Matt, it's my opinion that the labor attorney, Dominic Brady, already gave input, and I think you just read it into the record, that that's the residency requirement, or the residency preference is as determined by statute. I think that was pretty clear, and you know, if we want to change things to have some fantasy, to fit our fantasy and lies and propaganda, I mean, you could do it all day, but the facts are the facts, and we can't change that. We're Title A, we're civil service, and Jeff, if you think you need a lesson on it, maybe you should study, but quite frankly, if you just read the rest of the three paragraphs, if you read the three paragraphs,
I take offense to the condescending attitude that you have up here, and I would appreciate an apology.
Really, I'll tell you.
The condescending attitude does not work.
Condescending or not, I don't really care. I'm going to tell you, had you just continued reading 2 more paragraphs, you would have read the law, and it's simple, it's clear, it's nonsense, and I think we need to move on.
If the council wants to get labor attorney in here to discuss it, certainly, I have no problem with that. It's up to the council.
Well, let's just ask council, is anyone else confused? I'm not.
I'm not confused at all.
Ramon, are you confused?
Pretty easy.
Councilman Walsh, are you confused?
I'm not confused,
Okay.
but I would just say for clarification, the state test is the state test. So if 100 people take the test, they're ranked 1 to 100. If someone that is a resident of Ridgewood on the state test ranks 20, let's say, in Ridgewood, they are number 1 on the list. Maybe that's the clarification that needed.
And that's a state regulation. That's not,
Right.
so we don't make the rules. The state does. It's state statute and administrative code. So with that,
Mayor, would you mind if I just add something, please?
sure,
Because
absolutely.
this
Absolutely, Councilman
public
Hutchins.
comment started with my name, and
Yes, I agree.
it was thrown around. I'm also not an attorney,
Mm-hmm.
and I know I've had miniature U.S. flags waved in my face and the Constitution of the United States, but I'm pretty sure that because I serve up here on the dais, I don't check in my First Amendment rights at the door. So to anyone to suggest censorship from me stating my opinion runs counter to the argument of, you know, people feeling that they can say anything they want, which they're entitled to. Just because you have the right to do something doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. I think it's an important distinction with that. I don't just live under the Constitution. I took an oath to defend it. So I'm pretty well aware of what those rights are. I wasn't born in this country. I chose to be here. So I also appreciate the freedoms that this country allows me and everybody else at the same time. So just wanted to make that clear.
And actually, I'd just like to say thank you for your robocall, Ramon, because it was the right thing to do, and it was honest. So with that, now that we will be moving on, and we appreciate everyone's patience, we are going to have a discussion on a couple of items. Okay, so let's move on. Tree trimming contract first?
Yes, the first discussion is under budget, awarding contract for tree trimming. This is parkland on the Crest Road at the View. We had obtained quotes in July of 2017, and and what I'm going to say is because of the fact that we wanted to meet with the residents on Hillcrest, which are below the View, to let them know what was going to be going on and what was going to take place. We held 2 meetings with those residents so that they understood what we were going to do. So because of that, it took time, and therefore the quotes that we obtained, we weren't able to use, because it's usually within 60 days of a quote unless the person or the entity providing quotes is willing to extend it. So what we did is we went out for another RFP, and so we had 3 registered plan holders who picked up specifications. We received 1 quote. It was for $17,450 from Downs Tree Service. They contacted the other 2 plan holders. One, they left a message and did not get a return phone call. The second, Ken's Tree Care, said they were too busy because of the current backlog that they had due to the winter storms with all the tree limbs coming down, and they did not want to backlog the work for the village. So that's why they chose not to put in a proposal. Basically, what will happen is that the road will be closed in this area and for a day, and then the tree service will do their job. Our Parks Department will come in and chip the trees, and it will be done within a day. Again, we will notify both the residents of Hillcrest Road below the View as well as the residents of Crest Road where it's going to be closed off, so that they're aware that this will take place once we have the date. So that's basically the explanation.
Any questions on that?
Okay.
Nope.
The next one is the financial advisor, which is Acacia. We are in the process, as you know, of evaluating successful candidate for the design and construction of the parking garage. Project is approximately $11 to $11.5 million. Engaging a financial advisor to guide the village through the alternatives available to obtain the lowest, most favorable interest rates and financing structure would be very beneficial. We're recommending Acacia Financial Group. I know Councilman Hache had spoken to several banks, and they had recommended that we get a financial advisor, and Acacia was the name that kept coming up. We did meet with a representative, Josh Nikita, and actually Mr. Rooney had worked with him when originally we were going to go with BCIA. With that funding, Acacia was the financial group that was used then. It has nothing to do with the BCIA. They're not affiliated with the BCIA, but he had had a history of working with him during that previous time. So this is to award the contract to Acacia in an amount not to exceed $25,000. That's it. And then one more. I didn't know if you had questions on that one. The last one is awarding a professional services contract for the Green Acres diversion. As you recall, there was a parcel of property on South Broad Street which was given up as parkland. It used to be a playground and play area for children. It was given up as parkland, and affordable housing was built there. That's known as the Green Acres diversion, because we diverted Green Acre property to another use, which shouldn't have been done, and this was done back in the 1970s and early 80s. Therefore, we're now in the process of trying to find replacement land for this land that was taken off of parkland on South Broad Street. Part of this process is that we have to get 2 certified appraisals on that South Broad Street property, and then when we find the replacement land, we'll also have to get 2 appraisals on that property. So this is the first of the appraisals on the South Broad Street property. Again, it's just the land, it's not the buildings on the land, and we must use Green Acres approved appraisers to do so. So the first appraiser we would like to hire is Mark Hendricks of Hendricks Appraisal Company out of West Orange. It's a fee not to exceed $3,000. And if the village council does approve this, he could be there next week. So I'm hopeful that we can do this. We will obviously notify the residents of that piece of property that they will be there. Again, they don't have to go into their buildings or their homes. This is just for the land itself.
Great. Any questions? Anyone? Nope. So we'll take a motion to suspend work session and convene special public meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Hache?
Yes.
Councilman Seaton?
Yes.
Councilman Voigt?
Yes.
Councilwoman Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor Knutson?
Yes. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled. Same is provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Councilman Hache?
Here.
Councilman Seaton?
Here.
Councilman Voigt?
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh?
Here.
Mayor Knutson?
Here. Move the Village Council minutes of September 27th, October 25th, 2017, and January 10th, February 26th, and February 28th of 2018, having been reviewed by the Village Council, now available in the Village Clerk's office, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Hache?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes. Resolutions?
The following resolutions, number 18-40, 18-141, and 18-143, are to be adopted by a consent agenda with one vote by the Village Council. There's a brief description beside each resolution to be considered. 18-140, Title 59 approval, tree trimming on Crest Road at the View. 18-141, award contract tree trimming on Crest Road at the View not to exceed $17,450. 18-143, award professional services contract, Green Acres Certified Appraisal, Block 3905, Lot 19, South Broad Street, not to exceed $3,000.
So moved.
Second.
Hache?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes. Motion to adjourn?
There's one more.
Oh, what?
The following resolution, 18-142, will be considered separately and read in full. 18-142. Whereas there exists a need for professional services for financial advisory services related to the Hudson Street Garage project for the Village of Ridgewood, and whereas the local public contracts law, NJSA 40A:11-1 et sec. Requires that the resolution authorizing the award of contracts for professional services without competitive bids and the contract itself must be available for public inspection, whereas the Village Council of the Village Ridgewood is satisfied the Acacia Financial Group is qualified to render the required financial advisory services, whereas Joshua Nikita is a licensed professional and managing director of Acacia Financial Group with an office located at Acacia Financial Group, 6000 Atlantic Drive, Suite 410 North, Marlton, New Jersey, 08054, in an amount not to exceed $50,000, whereas Acacia Financial Group has submitted the required pay-to-play forms, and now therefore be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood, the village manager and the village clerk are hereby authorized and directed to execute a contract for professional services for the financial advisory services related to the Hudson Street Parking Garage project with Joshua Nikita, Managing Director, Acacia Financial Group, 6000 Atlantic Drive, Suite 410 North, Marlton, New Jersey, 08054. This contract is awarded without competitive bidding as a professional service in accord with NJSA 4A:11-51A of the local public contracts law because of the specific expertise required for this project. A notice of this action in accord with the aforementioned statute shall be published as required. Be it further resolved that the Chief Financial Officer has certified the funds are available on account P-27-55-5601V, Ordinance 3595. I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Hache?
It was read as 50,000. I thought it was 25,000, not to exceed 25. Which is correct? 25? Okay, so yes to the 25,000.
As amended.
As
So
amended.
we'll amend it to that effect.
One of them did, yeah.
Yeah,
So, but the
it
one
says-
says,
It says not to exceed 25.
It was read as 50, that's
Oh,
Right,
it's
it's
ready.
read as
Okay.
50, so as amended.
Yeah, yeah.
So
As
somebody
amended.
made a motion as to amend it, so somebody has to second that? Is that what it is?
Second.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Someone made a
was
motion.
To amend.
Okay. Thank you. Hache?
Yes.
Sedin?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes. Now we can have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, good.
Hache?
Yes.
Sedin?
Was there a second?
Yeah, I second.
Okay, yes. Sorry.
Sorry. Hache?
Yes.
Sedin?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we're back. Okay, great. So we're moving on to our very exciting presentation. Representation from Epic Management is here this evening. We're going to go over our Hudson Street parking garage. So if you want to just come on up, and I think our monitor should be on. Okay. There is a handheld microphone there, if everybody can just use that as well. Oh, no, it's good, come on, sorry. And now we can't see anyone, which is kind of funny, if that's okay. Microphone, and just for the record, if you mind, just introduce everyone from Epic so that everyone knows who's speaking. Okay, great. Oh, and yeah, and you can actually, two things, if you don't mind, first introducing everyone that's here from Epic, and then just face the crowd because the audio is really bad and they're going to want to hear and understand what you're talking about, so just ignore that we're even here. Okay, good.
Hi, good evening, everyone. With me tonight are representatives of Epic Management, the construction side of the design-build entity, and Tim Haas and Associates, the design side, the engineering side. So from Epic is Bill Costello. Bill's our project executive. I'm Joel Lazat. We have Jim Zullo from Tim Haas and Mike App from Tim Haas. Some of you may recall back in February when we were here, we responded to an RFP, which at the time requested 3 options for garage designs. And at this point, we've been asked to present on 1 option. And that's what you're going to hear about tonight. The way it's evolved from February until today, some of what you see in front of them, you'll see on the screen, and then a brief discussion about actual schedule and cost. So with that, turn it over to Mike.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike App. As Joel mentioned, we were asked to provide 3 concepts. We have narrowed that now to 1 that we have felt is more appropriate, and then we've gotten some good feedback from the council members on. I would like to express, before I start with any of the images that you see, that this is meant to be a collaborative process. And so we will be working with you. So what you're seeing are suggestions about what we think is appropriate and some things that we're recognizing. I don't live in Ridgewood. So as a visitor to Ridgewood, there's certain things that I notice that I think are very special about Ridgewood. It's not common for me. You know, it's new for me, and that's what's special. And so I'm hoping that I'm seeing these things and reflecting them. They may be common for you, and you're not seeing them daily. So that's what I'm hoping to draw out. You're all aware of the site. This image, you all have the packet. This just demonstrates where the garage is to be located at the corner of Hudson and Broad Street. This is the footprint of the garage. What you're looking at is the ground level of the garage. We have a couple of things that we need to keep in mind. One is that there is a garage, or a surface parking lot that is behind the garage that serves those businesses that face Ridgewood. And because of that, there's an easement that comes through our property that we're required to maintain. So that means that access to that back surface lot will be through our garage. So there is a moment when you enter the garage. If you're parking in the garage, you'll go upstairs, and I'll point that out to you. But the easement is meant to access through and to that surface lot. That's what Joel was just pointing out. So on this board here, we're maintaining that access through. If I can walk you through quickly the operation of the garage and how traffic will flow through the garage. Everyone is coming off of Hudson, so the entry-exit point is on Hudson Street, very similar to the way the surface lot works now. One thing that we're doing with the garage is we're reducing all those access points that the surface lot has now. I think it has 3 places where you can drive in now. That will be reduced to 1. We think that that helps, obviously, from just a safety standpoint, that there's really one place as a pedestrian that you need to make sure that you're paying attention, right? There's one place where cars are coming in and out. Yeah. And Joel's just bringing up the fact that it's not at the corner, that we're doing it mid-block. That's a normal thing that we like to do. Obviously, that keeps that moment when cars are pulling in and out of the garage away from the actual intersection, too. That's just a normal, standard thing that we do in our business. You'll see that there's some parking on this ground level. That parking, which we will determine the use for that as we work through this design process, could be used for short-term parking, or could be some kind of dedicated parking. That's something that we'll determine at that point. But because of at least some of our initial conversations about how we would collect revenue on the garage, the gate cannot be right at the entry point. We think that that would be a bad feature of design to put the gate there, because it would bottleneck right at the entry. You'd have cars backing up into the street, so that's something we don't want to do. So we think that there may be parking that's on the upstairs levels that is a little more long-term, and some parking that is on that ground level that might be a little bit more short-term. Again, to be determined. So once you've decided that you're going to be a long-term parker, maybe you're a commuter for the train station, you would then proceed to the levels above. And so this is an example of what one of those levels above would look like. So to the north edge of the garage is the ramp, or it would be the rear of the garage, if you will. And you would make that left turn and climb the ramp, and then you'd get to this parking level, which would be a flat level. And I say flat, it is sloped slightly to allow drainage, but it's generally flat. You can see that the main stair tower is in that northwest corner. We feel that this is the appropriate place to locate that because, again, we want to build this for the retail opportunities that are here in Ridgewood. So we want to be able to put people out on the street closest to the majority of the stores and the restaurants, and also as access to the train station if that's a need. There is a secondary stair because we have to have 2 stairs for egress by code. So that second stair then is in the lower corner. Joel's pointing that out now. But, depending again on who's using this, if this happens to be used by the church, possibly, people could use that stair, free to use that stair to go up and down and go to the church. Again, this is that top level now, very similar in how the second level works. Oh yeah, okay. We're providing a turnaround. So as you can see, there's not a donut. You all are familiar with parking garages. We don't have a donut here where you can kind of circle around and come back down. So there is going to have to be a moment when you pull into what would be a dedicated turnaround type of spot and then pull back out. So if you can't find parking, you're looking for spots all the way to the top at that moment, then you'd have the chance to pull into that spot and come back down. Okay, yes. Joel's good at reminding me. So there will be a counter. We're showing that in one of our elevation drawings. I'll point that out in a minute. We've just shown this. There's two diagrams I want to just raise here. If at some point in the future of Ridgewood and this parking garage that there's some desire for more retail space and less parking, the garage is going to be designed so that it can accommodate that. It's a trend in most garage design today to turn that ground level over to be some type of retail space. This garage will have that opportunity. So we're showing two examples. One is sort of near future and far future, possibly. Just to describe our process a little bit, when we came here, we've been here a couple times actually over the last 2 or 3 years actually, looking at your town. Again, I think your town is really charming. I really like it here a lot. We have looked at several of the buildings that you have here in town for some design inspiration. This concept is taking a look at these two, which is the Blue Mercury and Mount Carmel, and I think both are very attractive. I really like them a lot. So we're pulling some design features out of those two buildings so that this garage feels like it belongs in this neighborhood. So this original sketch was to get some of those ideas down on paper, which has now evolved a little bit. So this is where we're at with this concept. Again, this was one of three, and again, I want to stress that this is not the end. We're still working on this, and we'll still be working with you on this. But a couple of things that I want to raise here from a design standpoint. The corner in Ridgewood is a very important architectural feature, and just about every one of your major buildings has a very attractive corner. It's either chamfered or it's round. It usually has a special roof design. There's something special going on at every corner in Ridgewood, and that's a neat thing that we want to bring into this garage as well. We feel like that will continue to sort of work with the architectural fabric that you have here. So that's what you're seeing on the far right on that screen that's over there, is the corner piece being a little more ornamental, and you'll see we have another image of that. The tower that is then to the far left, which is here, is where we have the stairs and the elevator. Because of how the elevator is going to be configured in the space, there isn't an opportunity to have like a window into the elevator. That's something that we would normally do for safety. Okay, safety and security, we would want to have more glass into the stairs and elevators. They will have that. They'll be on that alley that faces the store to the north. So there will be that. You will have some access. If someone is on the street, they still will be able to look. But what actually fronts Broad Street will be more of the solid wall here, which we think is a nice opportunity actually for something else, like some type of artwork or some type of advertisement or announcements. We don't know what that is yet, but thinking that you have lots of restaurants here again with outdoor seating, I think there's an opportunity there to do something nice, and maybe it even changes seasonally. On the lower portion there, this long elevation, this is the Hudson Street side. This is what's facing Mount Carmel, and because it is a big building, what we're trying to do is we're trying to break the size of that down so that it somewhat emulates a little bit more of this traditional retail scale that these old towns have. And so what you'll see is sort of a couple different things happening. The roof line at the very top of the garage, we're changing that just to, again, get some rhythm going. Within the facade itself, there's different heights of the main material. We're also popping awnings. We're doing things like some of the openings that somewhat emulate some of the other openings around town. So we're trying to pull some of those different architectural features. And we'll talk about material in a minute. That the image that's on the upper right corner there, it's not on my boards, that you'll see, that is a stone that is made into the piece of precast itself. And that's what the samples that I have here in the chairs are trying to demonstrate, is that precast concrete has a lot of different opportunities for different types of material. So we can obviously make it look like concrete if we wanted to do that. We can also embed brick. We can embed other types of stones and things into it. They even make form liners that can replicate just about anything. So you can get a bamboo-looking garage if you want bamboo, right? There's all kinds of things. So we think it's appropriate for you to bring that stone into this. And we're still working on like how do we want to do that, but we think that that's something we can do in the precast and bring that out. We are bringing one thing that's historical back. So the the old statue, the sculpture that was saved from the fire station that used to exist on this site, we're going to reuse that in our design. It's just a small thing. It's, in relative to the size of the garage, it's going to be relatively small. But again, we feel that that's something that can go right on what would be the Broad Street side of the garage. And again, this is just sort of showing how that one artwork panel can change, move in and out. This would be the image from the actual church side. So a couple things I want to talk about quickly before I turn it over to Jim to talk a little bit. But one of the things that we're trying to accomplish here is not only get a parking count that was requested, which was 240 cars, where right now we're hitting 250. That does include 10 motorcycle spots, which was also in the RFP. So we're right now at 240 cars and 10 motorcycle spots, so it's a little bit over what we were requested to hit. 255, right. And, but what I wanted to express to you too is that this is all normal 90-degree type parking. We're not trying to do anything funny with parallel parking inside the garage, things that, is just not comfortable for most folks. It's also not code compliant to do it on the ramp. So I know that some people are looking at the ramp and saying, well, there's a few more spots there. We don't recommend doing that, and it's not allowed by code either. So the garage is also going to be, again, remembering that easement that's there, that garage first floor has to be a little taller. That easement is actually 13 feet tall. So we have to make that first floor of that garage a little bit taller. But again, that's good because if this was to ever become a retail space, you would want a little bit higher ceiling for ductwork and lighting and sprinklers and that kind of stuff. But also, just from an experience standpoint, things that are low and dark and like garages are very uncomfortable, and people don't really like them too much. We don't want that. We want something that's going to feel a little lighter and airier and more open, and it will be safer because of that too. This is the image then from that main intersection, and you can see that the corner is very important, that we're trying to emphasize that. We've chamfered this to also widen that up on the sidewalk right at that point. We think probably because of that intersection and the way cars are turning out, that's going to be necessary for visibility. So I think it's a good thing to do, not just from an architectural standpoint, from a safety and functional standpoint. And then I'm going to let Jim speak a little bit.
Thank you. Just a couple things. Can you hear me okay without this? No? All right. Mike had mentioned, the sidewalks. Sidewalks are 10 feet, and this corner, you talked about some safety concerns. It's really a very, very comfortable sidewalk, very significant corner, so it improves the sight line there. And so we've really taken, a good effort to try to increase the walkability and the comfort of that sidewalk. And comfort is very, very important in a parking garage. As Mike indicated, this first level is going to have a good head height. It's going to be, 11 foot clear or 13 feet clear. So the nice thing about that, and what we do is we whitewash usually the first level of the underside, and it gives it a very, with the nice LED lighting, very, very comfortable feel, very modern feel. And I think that's very, very important in a town, who cares so much about, the sensitivity and things like that, and that'll be a really great feature. And just operationally, I come from an operational background. That's something I'm going to bring to this team and bring to this project, that when we design a facility, not only are we there to design it and Epic to build it, but we're going to help you, set up the proper operations, with obviously everybody's input as to what makes sense. Mike had mentioned gates. It may not necessarily be a gated facility. It could be open with different types of access and revenue control. So these are all the things we'll be looking at, working with the town, working with whoever else might be play a role in that, because that's the most important thing when it's built and designed, and it's going to be a very user comfortable facility, and it's also going to be very well designed to be operated. And I think very important too is maintenance. Parking garage, this is a significant investment for the village. We recognize that. It will be designed with all of the latest technology and strategies to make it very durable, but maintenance is very important. What we do as a firm after the building has been up for 11 months, we come back and do a thorough inspection, make sure that it's been built to standards, that any issues that may arise that are still under warranty will be corrected. And then we are, as our firm, and the commitment to Village is we're going to come back for every year for 3 years thereafter and do an inspection of the facility and write a report, or a letter report for the municipality to make sure that any items are being addressed and taken care of. Because it's very important with the investment that the village may make here that this important asset be maintained and literally serve the village for decades to come. I mean, many decades. So with that, I don't know if I missed anything is there anything I want to touch on? So with that, Joel, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, so how are we going to get it done? So if you look at the schedule over my shoulder, there's 4 main bars. One is the design phase, which we're going to do in 6 months. We're going to accelerate that. Followed by 2 months of approvals, 9-month construction period, and 1 month of closeout. So before I go on a little bit further, I want to say that one of the most important things to do when you build a parking deck is to get the precast concrete on site. That kind of opens everything up. That's the structure itself, it's the floors, it's everything else. So what we want to do is 4 months into the design phase, we're going to buy the precast. We're going to have the precast done. We're going to fast track this. We're going to get that part of the job out first, the foundations, the precast, say the electrical and stuff, so that we can purchase the precast 4 months into the project. There's a 7-month period to get the precast on site by the time the drawings are done, have the material fabricated and brought out. So by doing that, we'll accelerate its arrival on site. You'll notice on the construction bar that there's 3 months occurs before the precast is on site. And what we're going to do during that period is we'll do the foundations, we'll clear the site, there's some special foundations that have to be done, some underground work, utility work, things like that, safe the site off. So we're ready to go. The foundations are done, the precast arrives, and we really go to town. There's doing this kind of method as design build with our partners at Tim Haas, we're able to fast track the project. Things like directional signage, glazing, you see there's some doors, things like that, the roofing over the elevator shaft, for example, that can all be designed later. So we're going to get the important stuff out first to keep the job going and be able to reduce the schedule. One thing I want to assure you is we're not going to close the existing surface lot until we're ready to go. We're not going to start the job, close the lot, and then you won't have use of it, the village won't have use of it until, whenever we get done. We're going to backtrack from when we know the precast is arriving on site, build in time for those preliminary activities, and then wait to the very end. And then the closeout phase is really after the garage is occupied. Certainly, in my experience, I've built 15 or so garages over the course of my career. And I think a 9-month schedule for a garage of this size on this type of site is reasonable, and naturally we do everything we could to deliver it a little bit early.
Just to reinforce, remember, the lot is open for use until the blue bar begins on the construction. So all during design, all doing approvals, the lot will be accessible and in use as it is, and we're going to minimize that construction phase as best we can, knowing how important it is to the village. So in summary, why does this team make sense for you folks? And again, this is kind of a rehash of what we had said last time. It's not a sales pitch, but it is the reality of the strength that we bring to the village. We, Epic, the construction side, we've built 26 parking garages in the state of New Jersey. We built 6 of them with Tim Haas. Tim Haas has 30 parking structures in the state of New Jersey. So this is not the old shotgun marriage kind of thing. We know each other real well. We're working together currently on several other garages, and we think that's great to try to achieve the schedule that we're talking about. So as it's been stated, this is a collaborative process. The way that the village has put forward this opportunity, this project delivery model, it lends itself to an inclusive, all-encompassing group think to try to make this something that is going to last and be favorably viewed for a very long time. We understand it's taken some doing to get to this point, and we hope that doing it the way we're doing it is going to really maximize everybody's view of it and the benefits of it. Remember, too, we're also building it specifically on the site. We're not encroaching on any other property. We're not taking over any sidewalk. We're building it existing on the parking lot and maximizing it with 255 spaces. You've heard about the flexibility. We're trying to be forward-thinking. You've also heard about how we're going to help you and the village work through the maintenance and work through how it's going to be structured as far as the pay. So we're trying to not just be builders and designers, but really kind of a partner. And I think that was the goal of the council in this project delivery model. And finally, we, EPIC, we're not new. We were here for the Ridgewood Board of Education's last program in 2010 to 2012. So we have been a fiduciary, and we protected your financial interests in the past. We expect to hope to do that again.
Thank you. So let's see if we have any questions from council members. Jeff, do you have any questions?
You can start with them, Ron.
No, okay. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Bernadette, Councilwoman Walsh?
Thank you. Thank you for all the work that you've done and that you're going to do. I guess just one question that I had, where is everything sourced from? Is it local, the concrete, like what is the process of
Can we just grab the microphone? And you know why? Because we're recording and we just want to make sure everything is, and we have people watching at home and we're streaming live and on TV, so. Great. And then we can see everyone again.
My experience is that most of the materials will be locally sourced. In the state of New Jersey, there may be some things from outside. But one of the main components was the precast concrete.
Could you bring that up closer to your, thank you. Is it on?
Is it on?
Okay, start again, please.
No?
Okay, I'll start again. What we find in our experience has been most of the materials are locally sourced. Certainly the labor is locally sourced as well. However, a large component of the project, as you know, is the precast concrete. Chances are that will be fabricated outside New Jersey. There are two firms, there's basically 6 firms to fabricate precast for this area of the country. 2 are located in New Jersey, one in Connecticut, one in Vermont, and the others in Pennsylvania. So they'll generally be, that's generally where they'll come from. There may be some other items, specialized, say, as the elevator, for example, that may not be of local, but pretty much we find that it'll be local subcontractors and local labor and mostly local materials. One thing we will try to do that we've done in the past is compel our subcontractors to buy locally, you know, where they can, and we'll try to get the community involved as well.
And then the only other question is, what's the staging process? Like, is it just brought onto the site? Is it going to be staged somewhere else? Or?
Sure. What will happen is the crane will probably set up, if I can have the, if you want to give me the floor plan. The way we would see this going together, yeah, that's good. The way we would see this going together, okay. It would be erected in an easterly direction this way. We'd like to get this end first. The crane would probably be sited in this area. Trucks would arrive onto the site, and the crane would erect the first section. It's probably 3 moves for the crane. 1 here, 1 in the center, well, actually 3.5, we'll say, 1 in the back. Main reason to get this erected is because of the elevator. We want to get going on that stairwell and the elevator as soon as possible. That's something that generally takes a while. Also, it would lend itself to the traffic flow onto the street with the delivery trucks. Certainly not all the trucks can fit on that site, and we're not going to have them stacking along the road. The precast contractor will secure an off-site location where they'll bring the trailers in, drop them there, and there generally will be a tractor, you know, a cab of a trailer truck that will run the trailers back and forth to the site. Generally what they do is they run a couple back, they'll load one trailer on top of another, and one cab will take that back. But
we'll have requirements in our documents that we'll develop for this job that, like we do for all our projects, that require that, you know, we can't have concrete trucks stacking on Hudson Street. We can't have precast trucks. We got to kind of be a good neighbor and stay out of everybody else's way. But precast is something that definitely would have to have a staging location off-site, and that's typical.
That's all I have for now.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
And your elevations, everything looks really great. I remember back in February, I believe you guys talked about a valet service or trying to accommodate some commuters as the garage is being constructed and the lot's not in use. And I was wondering if that's still part of the plan.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we recognize, you know, that this is such a critical lot, and as you mentioned, that, you know, our intent is to limit it being out of use as much as possible. And what we thought is that to help accommodate the loss of parking, that we spoke to some valet operators, SP Plus, who's a nationwide parking management company, about operating a valet to help, you know, mitigate some of the loss of parking. So in our proposal, we provided a cost associated with that, and basically what we would do, if that's something you want to proceed with, you know, we'd bring in an operator and work with you as to where to do it, how to do it, and, you know, look at the most efficient way to operate it. Again, to accommodate, be it, you know, downtown shoppers, restaurants, or, you know, train commuters, whatever the most, you know, demand is, you know, in terms of the Village Eye. So I think that's a nice, you know, way to do it. It recognizes that you're doing something to try to mitigate the loss of parking while it's being constructed. So.
Put the schedule back up. Schedule, please. One thing that we neglected to mention is this project is being delivered under a guaranteed maximum price, and based on the design that is presented at this time for 255 spaces and what we know about the site, et cetera, our guaranteed maximum price is in and about $11 million, just to give you a sense of scale as to this particular project and how it's laid out.
Mike, if you just go back a couple slides to the calendar, this is why you won't have people needing to turn around. Because they're, you know, today it's a great system where you put it on the exterior of the garage so people driving on Hudson Street can see what space is available. The garage is very convenient, and it's, you know, it eliminates people driving in, having to leave, and traffic. So it'll be a nice and fairly inexpensive to implement.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I don't have any further questions at this time.
So the guaranteed maximum price is 11 million, you said? Yes? And how long is that good for? I mean, if there's delays, in other words, if we decide to move this out another 5 or 6 months, what happens to that price?
Right, well, ultimately, we bid this out on the street to various subcontract trades. And at that point, you know, we'll see. But our expectation is, based on our experience in doing this, that this price should be good for the near term. You know, I can't say if it extends out for 6, 7, 8 months before we get a chance to begin our process, that we can guarantee that.
Yeah.
We don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, would you anticipate price increases if it's delayed?
No, not in the near term. We've taken into account that by including a contingency within our proposal based on our knowledge and our experience of what could happen in the market. For example, if this was a structural steel garage, we'd have far graver concerns because of what's literally going on, and that's true. As a construction company, we see it. The prices we're getting are incrementally increasing 10%, 10%, 10% per month just as of the last month. That would be a far bigger concern here. Yes, there is steel within the precast pieces, but it's not nearly as significant as if this was an actual structural steel building, for example. So we've taken into account, to the best degree we can, projected increases, again, within a reasonable amount of time.
Okay. So this is going to affect Mount Carmel for a period of time. It's going to affect Mount Carmel, the church, for a period of time as far as their traffic flow and whatever else. And it's the 9 months as it's being constructed. Is that right? That 9 month time frame?
Well, don't forget
during the week. We're not working on the weekends. And as Bill stated a moment ago, we'll take very specific precautions in each of the bid packages to ensure that each bidding subcontractor knows exactly the rules of the road that we collectively want. And those rules are always made not just in a vacuum by, say, us and Tim Haas and the council. That could include the rules by the police, the fire, EMS, in this case, the church. There could be specific weeks, for example, Holy Week, Christmas week, where we may want to even go that much further with respect to what we're allowing the contractors to do or not. The important thing to know is that's all in the bid documents, so there's no surprise the week before Holy Week when we tell them, hey, you can't be here next week. And then they say, whoa, wait a minute, you owe us money, or we can't do that. All these things from our experience are things we learn, and proactive, not reactive. So that's how we're going to address things like that to the greatest degree we can possibly control them.
Yeah, so do you anticipate working with the traffic and also with the church and ensuring that there is reasonable traffic flow and parking availability during the weekend masses? I mean, that's going to be the biggest issue, I think, for the church, is having it accessible and making sure that people can park in and around that area.
Well, as Joel said, we're working during the week. I think equal concern to the church is all the local businesses, the restaurants. And we have to work with everybody. You have to be a good neighbor with everyone. But I just want to reinforce that we're limiting to the site. We don't plan on trucks being out in the street. I will go back and say one thing. I said 3.5 moves with the crane. It's physically impossible to have the crane erect the last bay, if you will, the last 30 by 30 foot area from inside the site. That would have to be done with a small crane from the street. Now that would have to be coordinated with what's going on. If it's restaurant week, I don't know if you have that. So we can't interrupt the ongoing operations and affect the public at large. So that would have to be coordinated. Is it done on a Saturday? Is it done late one day? That type of thing. But it's nothing out of the ordinary that we do. If I've built 15 decks, 12 of them have been on sites like this. It's usually in a tight, congested site. So.
And my last question is, do you have, are you going to put together a model as what this looks like, or even like virtual reality so people can actually see how this thing is going to fit and look before it's built?
Yeah, well, obviously, we've done, some preliminary rendering, so, and we can have those discussions as to what, technological tools might be desired to interact more with the, with the community and to get a better sense. Obviously, we want everybody to have a very good and strong understanding of what, the garage will look like and feel like.
Yeah, and that may help, I think, as far as making people understand.
Sure.
So, thank you.
Hopefully you can get a sense from the rendering how much sidewalk space we're still leaving, that we're not encroaching on anything similar perhaps to what had been seen in the past, where the garage structure was much larger than what we're showing right now. But yeah, we expect to develop more renderings, more, not literal models in this day and age, but some physical computer-driven things that everyone will be able to participate in.
I just had one question on the sidewalks. What did you say the width of the sidewalk was? 10. And that's along the on both lengths of the building, and then what would the corner be?
I'm not sure of that exact dimension, but I'm assuming it's maybe around 15 feet.
Okay.
It's 10 on either side, and then with that one cutback, it would be a little
because the corner is particularly generous, and it
Yes.
adds a nice sense about it.
Yes.
And so you're comfortable that when this structure is completed, that space is enough for trees and there to be that type of greenery that you're showing here?
Yes.
Which softens the entire lot.
Exactly
Okay. And I don't think I had any, just one last question. The caulking, because I know the caulking, we had that conversation because the caulking is temperature issues, so is that being done in this off-site process? And how will that work? And is it contingent on temperature issues?
The sealing is done on site, and yes, it is weather sensitive, as is any traffic toppings that we have to have. I think there was some rooms below the ramp. That has to be done with like a waterproofing agent. Yes, they are weather sensitive. That's why it really depends when we release, we come to an agreement on what you want, as in what the village wants as far as the design, and we go forward. And then at that point, we're hoping we can not have to work through the winter weather.
So ideally, because the on-site that has to be done, what is the time frame that you want to be at that point? What point in time do you want to be there, ready to finish that work?
Well, I mean, from a seasonal standpoint, operationally, you'd want to be somewhere done before the middle of December. You know, and then maybe it's March before it gets kind of warm. You know, there's other things like the concrete for the top. There's toppings inside the garage for drainage. That's weather sensitive. Any like wet trades like that. So in a garage, those of you that have been in one, it's always cold. It could be the middle of summer and it's cold. But once that concrete, you know, absorbs a lot of cold temperature, it takes a while before it warms up. But I mean,
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I had one or two more questions about
yeah, I mean,
drainage. Go ahead.
Just looking out, you know, 17 months now, from around now, optimally, if you're able to go forward soon, we'd like to deliver it before the holiday season of 2019.
Okay.
And that would also beat the weather.
Okay, good. So go ahead, Mike.
I remembered another question I had. I was wondering how you're going to address drainage in the structure because of salt and issues like that could really start to eat away at the concrete. So, you know, drain placement and maybe the degree that the inside will be sloped so that water could get out of there with the salt and everything else.
Well, Mike can speak to the particulars, but drainage itself and getting water out of a garage it's the most important thing there is to do. You can have ice situations that you don't want to have. You can, it also puts a lot of wear on the garage, on the connections and all. Even though they're stainless steel in a lot of cases, it puts a lot of wear and tear on them. We've done things like, if the pitches don't look like they're going to fully work, we've countersunk drains to create enough pitch. But really at the open ends of the garage, wherever you have the openings, you have to really be cognizant there of how the drainage is done. Because you're going to get wind-blown rain occasionally, and of course on the top deck you'll get water. Also, we put a silene sealer over the concrete, and that'll protect against the salts. You know, that would be in de-icing salts.
As a component of what we'll do is also put together a maintenance manual. So obviously, you know, as you de-ice the facility, you know, we'll give you products that don't damage concrete or that type of thing. Obviously, the salts that do the damage are the ones that are dragged in cars and they drip and that. But even, you know, what we would recommend is an annual wash down of the facility to help, you know, cleanse those salts out of the facility. So we're pretty confident with giving you a very good maintenance manual and instruction and adherence there too, that you know, that the garage will again perform very, very well and be well maintained and last for a very long time.
We talked at one of the meetings about a very simple thing like extra hose bibs. I mean, just again, for ease of operation, little things like can maintenance people access it more readily than if, oh, I'm not going to bother because I have to drag the hose all over Oshkosh. So, you know, little things like that.
There's 2 small roofs, but those roofs will also be tied into the rest of the storm sewer system. So there's nothing really where you have this opportunity of water coming down and splashing and sitting on concrete. So, you know, in addition to the washing down that we've talked about, that normal water that you're going to get from rain or from dripping off cars, that's going to go right into those drains and into the storm sewer. In New Jersey, anything that's on the top level is considered similar to a surface lot, so that does go straight to storm. Anything that's below is, because we're adding these hose bibs, becomes a washing process, even though it might just be water. That then has to go into sanitary, and then we also always have an oil water separator so that, you know, we're not sending anything down into the sewer that we don't want to send down. So there's going to be quite a process for the water to get out, but it's all managed. It's not just splashing around.
All right, thank you. That was a very thorough answer to my question. I appreciate it.
I have actually one more question. So when I'm looking at the slide that's kind of looking at the garage from the corner, kind of angled down, if you go back, right there, go back one, right there. So rooftop lighting, because you need to have lights, can you just explain the type of lights that, because there's, in that vicinity there are apartments, there's some residential on the opposite street. Could you just explain the type of lighting that's up there? Because I don't think it's shown, right?
It's not shown. We would have a pole lamp type of fixture, which is what you're familiar with. Most of those types of fixtures now, because this has been an issue on a lot of garages, and we have had to solve this on some of our own, those fixtures actually have lenses that push the light down, so you're not getting a lot of spread. We need a little, obviously, we want to light the deck to make it safe, but we can manage that with either, a side shield on the fixture or the lens itself that can push it down.
And I think naturally we'll be utilizing LED lighting, which is, as everybody has seen in any newish parking lot, how dramatically different the level of lighting is and the type of lighting and the color of the lighting. So that will have a lot to do as well with how significantly we can change what this typical stereotype would be of lighting up like a football field.
Jumping at the bit
And
there.
controls. I mean, everybody knows what an occupancy sensor is. There'll be occupancy sensors so that if somebody's on it, it'll go up. But most of the time, these things are down, and you can set some of those. So you can either set that at 50%, or I was in a garage, Jim and I were in a garage 2 weeks ago, it was 10%, and it was amazing. You still could see quite a bit with just 10% of the light. So there's a lot of things that we can do even from a control standpoint. So we will do our best to manage that concern.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just more comments and a question. When we see a finished product, we can have a great appreciation for what it looks like, and we focus a lot, primarily on aesthetics and car count, but it's hard to understand the journey to sort of arrive at where we are now. And I think when, it's not an easy process. And we had a pretty broad selection of companies to work with. And I think, my challenge to myself walking away from the meetings was, how comfortable do I feel if we just went forward right now with what was just discussed in that meeting? And I think, one of the things that I commend you for is coming in extremely well prepared to the meetings. The transparency in terms of the list of all the items and where they're being bid, being generous with the contingencies to build in, because with these projects, things don't always go smoothly. So, I feel comfortable that we had enough baked in terms of contingencies, in terms of what the things are that we can encounter along the way. Also, the sensitivity in the thoughtfulness to all the different aspects of the things that will be impacted during construction. Number one, we talked about trying to get the timeline in as to not impact our busy holiday season for shopping for the CBD, which is very important. Thinking about the impact that it would have on the commuters that park there on a daily basis too. So you guys are including already, as part of the project, this valet service for the commuters, which I thought was great. Also thinking about the aesthetics and coming in, doing the homework and looking at, the dramatic corners of Ridgewood. I never really even thought about it that way, but I learned something today. And then also, even when we're talking about the technical aspects of construction, one of the things I was very impressed by was, in the process of discovering the soil borings, there was one area that was sort of questionable in terms of the integrity of the soil, and you came up with a very ingenious, but yet very cost-effective way to manage that. So I commend you for keeping, the overall number as small as possible. And you were also the contractor that came in that had the most improvement from when we started talking about the concept originally. I mean, we started a $12.4 million price tag, pre-GMP, and then we get down to slightly below 10 million pre-GMP now. So that is a significant reduction in costs. Obviously, we're very cost conscious here. But I just want to say, thank you, for being so transparent, for being so well prepared, and to really working with us. I know we're not an easy customer, but I appreciate your patience in doing so.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Anybody else? So I just also have to say thank you. This has been an amazing process, an amazing journey for some of us that have been doing this for quite a number of years now. My sense is that this is really the right design, the right size, the right structure, and presumably you agree that this is, just given that lot, given the immediate area and the surrounding structures, just seems so much more appropriate. And just getting the on-street parking back and filling those gaps, I think, is really a benefit, because those are by far the most valuable spaces. They're the most turnover. So we really appreciate that you're here again tonight. What I would suggest is that, if we have any residents that have questions, they're welcome to email those to us, and we'll get those over to you. So feel free to email our village manager, and we can field those questions and get them right over to EPIC. The other last thing is that we probably want to, I know we have 2 members of HPC here this evening who are sitting and paying very close attention, but we probably want to get a courtesy review on schedule for HPC and Planning Board, and we'll coordinate that so that we have that appropriately taken care of. So with that, thank you very much, and I just do want to say that I want to apologize that you had to sit through and observe the behavior that went on here earlier, so we do appreciate that you've been very gracious and your patience with that. Thank you.
So I just wanted to mention that the process that we're going to go through, we do need to adopt a redevelopment plan as well as adopt a bond ordinance to fund this purchase. And so we will proceed with that. We'll come up with some dates to do so. And then once those have been adopted, then we can award the contract to EPIC, and then they can get going. So we will come up with some dates for that and let you know. What we will do probably on May 9th, which is our public meeting, is to do a resolution to direct the planning board to look at a redevelopment plan. And then they will do so, I believe it's a May 15th meeting, and then it can come back to us after that time. So I think that's what we're looking at right now, but those dates may be subject to change. Okay. But that's an estimate of time now. Okay. Okay?
Very good.
So moving on, we have Ridgewood Water. The first is landscaping services for Ridgewood Water. There were 5 bids picked up and 4 bids were received. They ranged in price from, this is for a 2-year contract, from $122,000 to $380,000. It includes a $25,000 allowance for miscellaneous services, and the base service cost therefore is $36,000 per year. So the decrease in this cost from the previous year is probably because we removed sidewalk snow removal from the bid. What will happen now is Ridgewood Water employees will be doing the snow sidewalk removal. The current contract expires on May 31st. The services will include spring cleanup, edging, trimming, debris cleanup, mowing, fall cleanup, and gutter cleaning at the various locations, such as wells, pump houses, tanks, and offices. The recommendation is to award year 1 of a 2-year contract to the lowest responsible bidder, LTI Inc. of Montville, New Jersey, and the money is in the water utility operating budget.
Okay. Questions, anyone? Moving on. Okay,
the next item is a change order number 2 for water mainstream crossings. In 2015, an award was given to Mott McDonald, and then change order number 2 is now needed, which is $32,084.56. This is required for engineering charges resulting from contractor schedule overruns and non-owner changes. And in addition, Ridgewood Water requested field changes to match map records and to replace an adjacent main to facilitate the tie-in of the crossing.
Okay. Can I just, I actually had a couple. Does anyone have questions about this? Okay. Can we just explain, if I'm reading this correctly, that the issues are the engineering charges are resulting from contractor schedule overruns? So could you just explain that?
Yes. Unfortunately, the contractor that was hired
didn't complete the project on time. The original completion date was December 1st or late November. About a 3-month extra delay in completion. So during that time, we had employed the extra services of the consultant to assist us with the construction. And during that whole time frame, we deducted that amount from the contractor's pay request. So the money's been held, and that will be utilized to pay for this change.
Okay. All right. Any questions on that? No questions? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is another change order. This is for installation of backup power at critical facilities. The design project was awarded in 2016 to Arcadis US, Inc. At this time, an additional $66,802 is required. It's for extra work beyond the original contract scope. It's obviously going to be awarded to Arcadis, Inc., the original contractor. This includes additional permitting related to efforts associated with planning board approvals for Township of Wyckoff, Borough of Midland Park, and the Village of Ridgewood, as well as subsequent changes to design requested by the permitting agencies. The design changes include installation of bollards around the generators, evaluation and replacement of the generator unit to a different location at the site, and evaluation of additional fencing and landscaping. And in addition, there's additional effort required with the NJDEP. An easement onto Village of Ridgewood property will be required at our car facility, and an easement survey and description will be prepared. So it's basically due to permitting in the various municipalities, as well as some safety measures around the generators, is my understanding. Am I correct? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Any questions on this one? No? All right. No?
Okay, so the next item is Water Smart. As you know, we made a presentation several weeks ago, and then we had a representative from Water Smart come in and give additional information, because I know some council members wanted some figures and some more information about increase in participation by customers. And so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to both Mr. Calby and Mr. Timoney from our water department to, they'd like to move this forward if possible. Hopefully the questions have been answered, but they're certainly here to answer any other questions you may have or concerns, to address them, and hopefully we can move forward with this project.
Thank you. I want to thank you for the time, for us to explain some additional information. I unfortunately couldn't be here for that February meeting when there were extra questions asked and the vote was made. But sitting at home watching it, I was thinking of the answers as they were being asked. And then subsequent to that, it came time to prepare our budget for 2018. And as you know, when we highlighted the budget during our presentation on March 6th, or 2nd, excuse me, we highlighted a lot of the areas that were considered in the 2018 budget and the assumptions that we made based on the purchase of Water Smart. So I wanted to outline those tonight, and I actually put together in your packet, an Excel spreadsheet, kind of identifies the savings end that we anticipate each year based on the implementation. In addition to that, I thought further back and wanted to let you know, because one of the questions that came up from the council that night too was, I think, where this was coming from, and this is strictly a goal of the utility. We saw it back in 2016 to provide a software platform that will improve our customer service, allow us to engage better with our customers. Because I can tell you, me personally, coming on board in 2015, after the years of the estimated bills, knew that we need to put a new face to the utility. We need to engage our customers differently. And in today's world, a lot of people like to do that via their cell phones. They like to do that via their computer, and this gives us the means to do that. So that back in 16, Mr. Scheibner at the time and his assistant Justin Polpeck and I explored different options. It took us, to this point now to get to where we are, and we never made a decision because we knew Mr. Scheibner was retiring at the time, and then Mr. Timney came on, believe it or not, it's a year ago now, in April, and I charged him with the process of reviewing it all over again. And at that point, he came to the same decision point that WaterSmart was likely the best alternative. At that point, we proceeded with a, public bid based on specifications, to get the right model of a system that we would want that's comparable to the WaterSmart model, and, they were the bidder on that project. So, in the memorandum that I provided as a supplement, I explained that, but what I want you to focus on, Rio, and I hope if everybody doesn't have the table, I have extra copies. Everyone has it?
I think everyone has it.
So, a couple things to look at. I guess the biggest question was, what are we looking at in terms of costs annually? So I looked at a 5-year projection. Of course, the first year is the biggest cost because we have to implement it. But now, based on the timing and where we're at, that first year implementation is going to be much less. Because now we're not looking at a full year of, implementing the software and putting out 4, touch points to our customers, where originally we were hoping to start, early on in the year, provide 4 letters of notification to those customers, but now we're likely starting in the second half of the year. So we're probably looking to cut that down to 2 letters. I know as of the writing of this in March, I anticipated 3. So even the numbers you're looking at here in terms of total cost for year 1, 2018, of $138,000 and change, that's going to even be less. Because now we're looking at just 2 letters, possibly even 1, because there's 1 letter included in the package. There's a welcome letter. So we may be able to get away with just 1 additional letter based on the time that we launch. So we're looking for 18, and the cost probably being no more than $120,000. In addition to that, what I realized tonight, there's possibly even a prorate of the annual fee, because it's based on 12 months. So if we're only looking at balances of this year, 6 months, that additional item will be reduced too. So I think we're going to be below that $120,000 number. So then I projected forward for each year going forward. We looked at 2019 as another critical year. We expected at least to do 3 reports. Wanted to get a lot of touch points out to the customers. And then every year thereafter, we anticipated 2 reports. These would be geared at giving the customer a look at, what their usage is. And we'd probably set them up such that it's like an off-peak time and then a peak time of the season, so they have a comparison. And, just to clarify, these are not reports that the customer generates. These are reports we generate. Right. So it's a set number that we know. Mm-hmm. When the customer goes on and they view their account and print any information, there's no additional charge for that. Those aren't considered these reports. These are detailed letters that come out of the system. They're graphical, colorized, they're catered to our needs and put out in that fashion and mailed to the customers directly. So for each year I have that projected cost, total cost, it's at the right of the form. Through the 5 years, we're looking at a total cost of about $460,000, with, again, the largest cost being in 18, and then each year thereafter, it being much less. And just, you already know this, but there's only a minimum requirement each year. We don't have to do any of these notifications. If we just went straight out with just the software, we're just looking at $37,000 a year, just for the base software to keep it running. So the next few columns are the actual savings that I evaluated and projected. And I just want to run through each of those columns for you, and please ask questions as we go along if you have them. So the first column, and this was talked about in both Mr. Timoney's presentation and the consultant from WaterSmart, they anticipate about a 2.5% reduction in water usage based on the software buy-in. So I'm assuming for 18 we're going to get 0 of that. We're going to start off 6 months. I'm not going to assume 0 for that, but in the future years, I'm taking percentages of that and equating that to parts of the budget where we'll see that savings. There'll be savings in energy costs, there'll be savings in treatment costs, chemical costs, associated maintenance, repair of equipment. So that's what that first column is, and you can see how it steps up in about year 3 in 2020, and just follow that consistently through each year, and then even apply any inflation to it. The second column is staff reduction savings. We do anticipate that there will be changes to our staffing as a result of this usage. Again, for 18, we took a very small percentage of that. We see that really kicking in 2019 as we have full implementation and moving on thereafter. At this point, I did apply about 2% inflation on that number. The third column is savings for customer service outsourcing. So as part of the budget process, I don't know if you recall, in 2017, we had budgeted for about $110,000 to provide a call center for customer service. That goes away with WaterSmart. We no longer need that engagement. So I again, prorated about 50% of that to customer service or to WaterSmart. I didn't even take the full amount in this column, and I equated inflation to that as well. The fourth column is notification costs. In this year's budget, we significantly cut down the notification line, and that was again on the assumption that WaterSmart would be implemented. This is going to be our main means of getting in contact with our customers. You know, outside of emergencies, but eventually it can be used for that as well once we have a good percentage of buy-in. But this will give us the opportunity to email them or ping their account so that when they go on, there's a message from us with any type of notification. You know, it could just, be, that our Linwood well is back up and operating. It's putting another 600 gallons per minute in the system. It could be, we completed that generator project. Just any type of highlight or engagement, and that's going to be huge for us. Because right now we don't have that availability. We have a website, that has limitations. I have been using Facebook, but we only have about 1,000 likes. So we need to get more there. The last column, and to me this is the most important, and I don't mean this in a humorous way, but those touch points on conservation and what it does for our customers, that column to me is priceless. Again, coming from where I am and what I walked into here in 15, we need to rebuild the character of this utility. And WaterSmart is the one step in that process. So that's why I'm sitting back here today, and I'll be back every year to do it if I have to, because I firmly believe this is an important part of what we need to do for the utility. And just moving forward, I totaled those savings across each year, and at the end of the 5-year projection, the savings outweigh the cost significantly. So with that, I'll entertain any questions, please.
Okay.
And if I may, I know over the course of the last 2 months, Rich and I have had a conversation about what the impact of WaterSmart might be on some of the litigations that we've had. And I can say over the last 3 years, we've been in court 3 separate times, one in the Superior Court, another time in the Administrative Law Courts, and another time in the Administrative Law Courts with regard to issues on a variety of issues, on servicing meters, access to the house and meters, and estimated bills or estimated fees for the water usage and the like. And I think as we discussed this, that at least those are the 3 that went to litigation. There were numerous other ones where there were contests, but this would have probably resolved those without them ever coming to light. So I think there was an advantage that I told Rich that I would bring up, and certainly that is something that can be considered as part of this to try and alleviate some of the contests that go on an individual basis with regard to a homeowner or a property owner and the water utility. Thank you.
Questions? Councilman Boyd?
Rich, the guy who came here, it was like a month ago, I guess, the guy who owns the software, he mentioned something about doing a trial, a randomized control trial. Is that an option for us? I mean, I could see where we could potentially, have people use this and have people not use this and see what the differences were over time and see whether or not we're actually saving money or not. And he also mentioned, I think, that, if we didn't find a difference, then we might not have to move forward with it. We could get out of the contract. Is that an option?
Yeah, from what I recall, Mr. Timoney could correct me, that it wasn't a free trial, that he was offering that, exactly what you just said, that there's the opt-out, that at any point that we are not satisfied with the service, we can get out of the contract. And I would definitely stress for that with anything, that we have that clause.
Okay.
Certainly.
But on, excuse me, but on the topic of the randomized control trial, absolutely. So even like the 2.5% reduction number comes from utilities like us. So the idea was a randomized control trial sample is their recommendation. That's as part of the package. They want to study their own product to know the iterations and what works where. So if we opt to have a percentage of the service area not participate with WaterSmart so that we have a baseline to compare against, then it just gives us more data and gives WaterSmart more data to understand what's actually working.
Yeah, so it sounds like you guys are open to that, and as well as the vendor?
We're certainly open to it.
Okay, good, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
More of a comment than a question. I just want to thank Mr. Calby once again. I know when you stepped into this utility, it was a disaster, and you have done an amazing job to turn it around. You've gone above and beyond. You've been honest. You've given us all the information that we needed to come to better decisions. And your involvement outside of the utility, like just for instance, Earth Day last year was all about water. You had that big setup. It was great. And then this year, recycling. Again, it was really incredible. So I commend your work that you're doing. You're doing an incredible job. You're doing a very, very good job. And it's servicing not only the residents of Ridgewood, but even the other towns who are currently suing us, but they are being served much better by your presence in this utility, and you've really done a fantastic job to turn it around, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councilman Walsh?
So as luck would have it, I got my water bill today, and I opened it up with excitement. My water bill was $100.71. My prior bill was $129 and maybe 21 cents, something to that effect. The bill showed all of my usage all the way back, I think, more than a year, because it's done by quarter. So I think there was maybe 6 bars. I forgot to bring it with me tonight. It showed all of my information, my address, my account number. I subsequently got an email from the water company because I had also signed up for the email. So I got an email reminder that my water bill was due. So I got both of them. I guess for me as a ratepayer, because this is, we're talking here, I guess, as the board of directors of the water company, I feel like what we're getting is sufficient right now. I don't know if spending $500,000 right now is the wisest thing, because if I don't opt in, we're still paying, and I'm just one ratepayer, we're still paying the fee. So everybody would have to opt into this program for us to get the full effect. So we have no control over who's going to opt in. It's kind of like the grocery bags. We tell everybody to use the reusables, but you still see people getting the plastic ones. And so those are the challenges that I have with this in terms of spending this kind of money. The other thing, and I hesitate to talk about it only because you did put a note on here that we should talk about it in closed session, are any reductions. Once the reduction is done, there is no other savings because the reduction is done. So you put in the savings for several years, which technically is no longer a savings because the person's no longer here, if that were to be the case. So I guess I'm just concerned that really, at this point in time, there's really no added benefit for me as a ratepayer. So that's my comment.
Okay. Councilman Hache.
Thank you, Rich. Just a couple of questions. The different columns of what will be the realized cost savings if we move forward with this. Staff reduction being one. Column 3 talks about savings from customer service outsourcing. So I'm just trying to figure, other than staff reductions, where those savings come from, because they seem more significant than the staff reduction savings.
Yes, and there's a bullet at the bottom, but I'll explain that. There was $110,000 that was budgeted for additional customer service outsourcing. So we'd have an actual second phone number that customers could call
and obtain information on their bill. So we're removing that totally with WaterSmart. So that would have been an annual cost without this. So that's how I projected the 50% of that cost out of the budget each year, that savings.
So then, because it's 2 bullet points, the other one is the 60,000 that was removed from 2018 budget for customer notification. So
yes.
Now the question is, so let's say we don't go with this, what happens now to that 170 gap? How does that impact the services that we deliver to ratepayers?
Well, right now that, the budget for 18 is proposed and about to be approved in May. So the budget is what it is. It has those savings locked into it. So if we didn't go with WaterSmart, we're just going to have to, go knowing that we have those reductions and do best to cut, expenses in other areas to make up for it.
So we'll save the money anyways, just it'll be a one-year thing. You would have to kind of rethink the budget for 2019, is that
correct?
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. I guess you just have to decide if we're interested in moving forward with it. If not, we can just continue. Does anybody have an opinion about whether or not they're interested in, I think 2 of us were inclined the last go around, so unless anybody's had a change of heart.
So I guess I need to hear from Councilman Voigt. Councilwoman Walsh, I think you indicated you don't think it's necessary at this time.
That's correct.
And Councilman Hache. So if I could hear from the 2 of you.
Still not convinced.
Okay.
Okay. And Councilman Voigt?
I got to think about this. I need to understand, I think it's more important for us to to evaluate this over time from a baseline standpoint and do some kind of a trial, see if it actually does save money. And I just need to understand that a little bit better, and maybe if I talk to the vendor, just to kind of understand how that might play out, I might be interested.
Okay. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So our next area is parking. And as you know, back in December, we went out for an RFP for payment parking transactions using mobile technology and other related services.
I'm sorry. Can we just, is Bridgette going next? We were going to move.
Oh, sure, you can do that instead, absolutely.
If you don't mind, yeah.
That's fine. Okay, so we do have our planner here, Bridgette Bogart, and she has drawn up a blade ordinance to establish regulations for them. And so I'll have her speak to this. I know she worked with Mr. Rogers on this as well. Thank you.
And we're just on item 11D1.
Yeah, so we're going to just take it out of order so Ms. Bogart can present.
I'm excited
and then,
about this.
not have to wait through the rest of the meeting.
Good, so welcome. So thank you for getting this all together, and just, you want to talk about it and where we started and how we got here. That would be really great.
Need a microphone.
Turn on the microphone, and then please
move
speak
it
into
to
it,
you,
thanks.
Bridgette.
We've had a number of discussions at the planning board level, as well as I've had a couple different conversations with the mayor and Councilman Hash regarding the pedestrian safety aspect of the downtown and how to make the downtown more inviting. And we talked a lot about signage and the current signage regulations. And this particular ordinance only focuses on one particular type of sign, and it's called the blade sign. And it's what I just passed out to you. The village attorney didn't know what a blade sign was when I first indicated it to him. It's basically any sign that runs perpendicular to a building facade. The photographs on the handout are all blade signs. Just happened to be from a recent trip to London and Paris, but they were everywhere and very walkable communities, and I just thought this was a good opportunity.
These are your pictures?
Yes, and my kids are in some of them, but ignore that. But it shows you a good different examples of how blade signs are used to make more walkable communities. So right now, Ridgewood has all their signage basically parallel with all the building facades. So if you're walking down the street and you're trying to identify a building, most of the pedestrians would have to actually step out to the curb or into the parked cars area in order to actually identify the business that they want to patronize. So what the blade sign does is actually make it safer for pedestrians, and it actually makes the streetscape a little more pedestrian scaled versus more vehicle oriented. So I drafted an ordinance that would permit the blade signs perpendicular to a building facade in the B1 and the B2 district. And we have a couple of conditions or regulations that we set up, and these are just draft at this point for your review. But once we decided that the spec committee would have control and review of all blade signs, because this is a new concept for the village, and we just want to make sure that we are controlling the applications as they move forward. We're suggesting in this draft ordinance that blade signs would be permitted in addition to any other permitted signs that are currently in the regulations. We would have one blade sign per business, unless it was a corner building, and then they could have two, or a catty corner blade sign. If they encroached in the right-of-way, they would have to obviously get an encroachment permit, as the village requires for all awnings at this time and lighting. Blade signs can only be located on the first floor. They can't exceed 2 square feet in area, and they can't intrude more than 2 feet into the right-of-way. We suggest here that all blade signs cannot exceed a thickness of 6 inches, and the bottom of the blade sign for safety purposes has to be a minimum of 8 feet above the adjacent ground level. We say they must be double-sided because we don't want a blank side from one approach to the retail space. We suggest that they can be externally illuminated, but the illumination must be reviewed by the spec committee and must be in conformance with the lighting regulations set forth in the village code already. And they have to be mounted on a separate architectural bracket with some visual interest. And then lastly, they must have the same consistent design theme with the main signs located on that same retail space. So that's basically, like I said, it's just focusing on blade signs. Nothing else is changing in the ordinance, and this is just the draft regulations that we came up with in the meeting discussing signs.
Okay. So first, before we begin, I'm just going to thank you and thank Councilman Hachey and Bill Gilsenan for all of his work, and Matt, because this was a collaborative effort, and we've really been trying to rethink our sign ordinances, and this was really a terrific first step, because I think that these blade signs, and I was calling them shingles, perpendicular, however we want to call them, I think it's really a great opportunity to become a more pedestrian friendly and more visually interesting central business district. So if you have any questions, you want to start with Jeff, Councilman Boyd?
Good idea.
It wasn't mine, but I'll take some credit. Thank you.
Okay.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Walsh?
I guess my only question is, have we had challenges with the signs lately? Like, what is the reason that we would add? Because I know that we traditionally had like less signage, so, and then we did the signs on the corners so that we could give some direction. So is it that the businesses are uncomfortable with the signage, or like what was the?
So the reasoning behind it, what happened first, we started to look at, I think back going a couple of years ago, Blaze and I really started to rethink the sign ordinance, and then you and I started to work on it. We have some other draft documents for that. One of the things that happened a couple of years ago was when Fish Restaurant came before, I believe, Historic Preservation Commission. They wanted, because of the structure and the recess of the front door, they wanted to include perpendicular signage, and in order to do so, they would have had to go before the Board of Adjustment. And yet, it was the only way that restaurant would have been visible from the street, from actually the sidewalk. And so very often we find that our sign ordinance is actually very restrictive, and we're just really looking to update, to give a little bit more visual interest in our central business district, to become more pedestrian friendly, and in fact to give businesses the tools they need to succeed. And we're trying to really up the ante so that businesses do have access to those tools.
Yeah, so I mean, that would be the only thing that, you know, the samples that you have here are great samples of how it works. Mm-hmm. But if you've got awnings and then signs on the awning and window signs, and then you have this, you know what I mean? Is there going to be a limit, or how are you going to write it so that there's a limit as to what they can have, so that you're not having, you know, signs everywhere for just one business?
Well, I think my answer is twofold. One, the rest of the sign ordinance really needs to be updated and come to current standards. But we wanted to address this issue first because this is really focusing on more pedestrian safety, more visual interest. The second portion of that will be updating the rest of the sign code and trying to coordinate that and make sure everything's consistent. In the meantime, I think what we did is create a safety net here by allowing the spec committee to review it and to ensure that you don't have that visual clutter constantly.
Yeah, because we have the A-frames now, so it's like there's a lot of signage going on.
There is a lot, and the planning board has been talking about this in detail because between the window signs and the temporary banners and the awning signs, it could get too much, but if it's done tastefully, then it looks nice. So it's a big task to undertake, but I think this is a good first step.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilman Haché?
I think also one of the revisits to this was also a result, we had our Central Business District Business Community Forum back in January, and a good portion of the discussion centered around signage around the CBD. I think one of the concerns was that, you know, the look and feel of CBDs can be somewhat sterile if it's, you know, we have very stringent regulations around the signs, and businesses expressed their willingness to have just a bit more individuality and kind of, you know, promoting themselves. And I know that we talked about, you know, just some of the ordinances that we've had in and around the CBD just sort of being outdated, and which also triggered, you know, review of those. One of the things also I think that, you know, but how do you balance that? How do you balance bringing in that individuality without making it look like the Las Vegas Strip, right? So it's coming up with something that's tasteful. If you go to a lot of traditional downtowns, particularly in Europe, you know, you find the blade signs, and they add a lot of charm and character to those downtowns. Another issue was sort of the safety aspects of it. You know, when you have to drive past a business and turn your head to see if that's the business that you're going to, rather than looking down at your GPS, there's a lot of driver distraction in terms of, you know, keeping your eyes off the road and pedestrian safety. I think that was one of the safety issues that we had talked about. One question, because I know in Ireland, the kind of the rod that comes out, the bracket.
Yes.
I don't know what it's called, but it's almost like they're lit. So instead of having the outside source of lighting to reflect on the sign, it actually reflects down from the rod itself.
Right.
So it adds, you know, number one, kind of the uniformity, so you don't have some awkward-looking kind of lamp hanging from one side of the building trying to project. But I think it's also a nice touch and kind of keeps things very clean. Have you seen those applications in the U.S.?
In the U.S., I'd have to think about that. But we do, in this draft, allow for external illumination to be reviewed by the spec committee and has to be in conformance with the lighting regulations, which doesn't permit glare and it has to be directed to the sign.
Right.
And usually the spec committee requires a 6-month review of any lighting that's proposed, so we can control that and see what comes about from any proposals.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that, as we said, one of the things we want to do is have more pedestrian visibility, more visual interest. And just to Councilman Walsh's point, we've kind of already sat down and had a number of discussions about the type of signage, how much signage on awnings, on windows, to kind of rethink that because it's very, very restrictive. The other thing we've done to the A-frame signs, and I know we've had this conversation, very preliminary conversation with the A-frame signs, that they take up a certain amount of square footage. So if you wanted to say your square footage could be an A-frame, but somebody else's square footage could be Betsy the sheep. And so rather than say, well, you can only do that square footage on an A-frame, we would kind of expand that to say you can have X amount of square footage, but use what you want to do. And I think that what we're trying to create is just more visual interest and not be maybe so, you know, restrictive in that. And I think that the idea that the site plan exemption committee spec takes a look at it is helpful, because when we're talking about architectural bracketing and signage, we want to make certain that it's appropriate and we don't wind up with, who said the Vegas Strip? Yeah, so, any other questions? So this has to go to, we'll take this now to the planning board, because we did...
It would have to be introduced here.
Okay.
And then the planning board would be reviewing it and then brought back here to be adopted.
Okay, and Matt, this is did you put this together, so you're comfortable with this? Is this where
I didn't put it together. Bridget wrote it, but she and I reviewed it together. I asked for a couple of simple amendments, particularly the definition of a blade sign.
Yeah, you made me add the definition.
I was calling it a shingle the whole time, so I didn't really know what it was, blade.
But I'm very comfortable with it.
Okay, good. All right. Any other questions? So we're good, we'll just get it on the schedule, so once we introduce it, then we'll put it up on the schedule for planning board, and then we'll move it forward. Is there any reason for HPC to look at it, or just not really?
I don't believe so, but I don't really know how HPC, how their role fits into signage, but I'm not familiar with them.
I mean, I don't think so, but I'm
Not
just...
necessarily the ordinance, but as they come in, I think that's going to be a determination that's going to be made.
Okay.
For applications.
Yes.
All right, good. All right, very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll move on to parking. So again, we went out to get requests for proposals for payment of parking transactions using mobile technology. And 14 packages were sent out, and we received 5 responses from various vendors: Park Mobile, Kale America, Pango, Pay by Phone, and Passport. All of the respondents met the requirements. None of them provided an acceptable license plate reader system, which was one of the things in the bid, and so we'll go out separately to try to get this kind of a license plate reader. But this is our current Park Mobile. So no vendor proposed an end-user fee that would require the village to incur merchant services fees, which is currently what is happening with Park Mobile, with our current contract. Some vendors proposed user fees of 35 cents with no merchant fees. Setup fees and costs for permit parking transactions were higher than Park Mobile. Park Mobile is nationally known and serves over 350 cities and 3,000 locations across the United States. They're a leader in smart parking and mobility solutions, and they're the only company that provides both on and off-street parking and reservations in one single app. And at this point, if we were to change from Park Mobile, we would have to take down all the Park Mobile various locators and then put up new for the new one. This was reviewed by Mr. Rooney, our Parking Utility Director, CFO, Sergeant Jake Chuck, and myself. And so the recommendation is to continue with Park Mobile for the period of June 1st, 2018 to May 31st, 2019. So Mr. Rooney had provided a synopsis in the grid that he gave us. So the new contract for Park Mobile will be a 40-cent per transaction fee for the user, and then there will be no cost to the village at all. So it's covered by that additional 5 cents. So,
questions?
So, Bob, how much does this save us from the prior contract based on transactions?
So the prior contract was costing the user 35 cents, no cost to us on that, but it cost us 15 cents per transaction plus 3% of the gross revenue. So
those are gone?
Those are gone.
And so do you have a number from last year as to what that number?
I did not bring it with me. I had provided counsel with that analysis.
Yeah, I think it was like 50,000 or something like that?
Somewhere around there, yes.
Okay, so it'll save us about 50,000?
Correct.
Okay.
The other point is we were also trying to integrate our parking permit system with the same vendor. So that way we can integrate the license plate readers to PEOs. So when someone buys a parking permit, they register their license plate. and then we move forward with that. So it's all condensed into one. Park Mobile was the only one that came back with a reasonable number for what that cost was. Minimal, very little implementation cost, a couple $100. So as a package, they succeeded in meeting all the criteria and providing the service for the least amount of cost.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to say thank you, Bob, for putting this together and being able to bring us Park Mobile for really no cost to the village. Thank you.
Councilwoman Walsh?
I agree with the deputy mayor. Thank you for doing this. I know that there's a lot of young adults, everybody that uses Park Mobile that it is definitely useful for us. The only question I have is the $1 per permit per month. What is that for in the parking permit system?
So we have 356 permits roughly for annually. So they would charge us $1 for each permit per month. So the total came out to, I got my total here someplace. Bear with me. $4,200.
But that is for
That's for the parking
them
permit
to put it
system.
into the system.
Correct.
This isn't the user, this is for us.
Correct. So
Okay.
implementing the system so we get rid of what we have now. Residents or users will be able to go on a website to purchase their permits,
Yeah,
provide the documentation as appropriate, so it's all one package.
okay, thank you.
So this is indefinite, but we are going to look into it, so we may be able to do this for 2019, but it's certainly something that we're interested in, so it's good
Yeah.
that he got that information.
Yeah, we have an
For
option.
next year.
Right.
This will be an option so we can
Correct.
determine when we want to do this.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Councilman?
No question, thank you.
So I just wanted to say thank you because this, as you know, was quite the surprise to us when we learned that this was costing us money and we had anticipated it was costing us nothing. So for a nickel, we're saving an awful lot of money for the taxpayers and to the parking utility, as it should have been all along. So thank you very much, and I know we've been kind of going through on a month-to-month here, so the sooner we get this resolved, the better off we are. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So moving on to budget, we're awarding contract year 2 of a 2-year contract for disposal of recyclable materials. The first year and second year, Atlantic Coast Fibers. As you recall, they did reduce the amount that we were getting for the floor prices for various corrugated paper and commingled, but are holding it for the second year of the contract.
Okay. Questions? Anybody? Comments?
I'm just going to add a comment back to the comment I made to the water company. I don't know if anybody else has been watching all these documentaries on TV about the plastic bags and the overuse of the plastic bags, and there's a lot of communities that are now either charging in the grocery stores for using or not recycling the bags. So I don't know if that's something that maybe REAC, have they ever maybe thought about that, or?
Well, Ellie Gruber and Lisa Summers have presented at the council, and they've actually been looking at this for several months, and they're looking at other communities on how does it work, because it's done in a whole different manner of ways. So you could either ban plastic bags or charge like a nickel to use the plastic bags, or provide. We're looking into grants too, if we could buy reusable bags and then distribute them through REAC and different things like that. So they're sort of in the middle of that right now. They anticipated it might take about a year to really look everything and then bring it back to the council and come back with any kind of recommendations they might come back with.
Great.
So we're in the middle of it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, any other questions? Okay, moving on.
Okay, the next item is the eradication of bicycle lane markings around Garber Square. As you recall, the police department conducted a traffic study of Garber Square last June. A recommendation was for extending the combined right turn only and bike lane from 180 feet from the intersection going towards the wine cellar to 360 feet. So basically, it'll go from the beginning of the Pease Library building all the way to the stoplight. It requires the removal of approximately 856 square feet of existing green bicycle lane markings. There were two options. The first is to grind off the markings. The second is to coat the green color with a specific proprietary product. So this total cost for coating the green color and then also putting in new directional markings is $11,503.70. And we do have money in the budget for this. It will be with a Blackstreet bond coating, which is recommended by the police department. And again, it's proprietary to this particular company, Pavement Impressions, who also did the original bike lane.
Any questions, anyone? Go ahead.
So, as we talk about the developments and the plans for Franklin and the safe routes to school, bike lanes are part of that process. So, I guess we should think about what our designs, are they going to be like Grove Street going forward, or there has to be, a go-forward plan as to what we're going to be doing with our lanes. I know that this one is obviously very specific to the trestle area, but I think we should probably, bring that up in future discussions.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I just want to say that, we know that the instances of side swipes was significantly increased over this, and when I drive that, I always find that everybody's lined up in the bike lane, and you don't even know who's coming to which side, and I think this is really a positive moving forward, and the sharrows can always be incorporated, so, okay. Other questions? Moving on.
Okay, the next one is award of contract for crossing guard services. As you know, we outsource our crossing guard services, so we did go out again because the contract expires this May, or June, I'm sorry. And so therefore, there were 2 registered plan holders and 1 bidder. The sole bidder is All City Management Services, with a quote of $387,369.45. This is for 31 morning, 31 afternoon school crossing guard posts for 1 school year. The second plan holder did not bid. They had some certain concerns of their legal department. All City Management, again, is the current provider, and the increase was due to the fact that we did add an additional post, and we also gave a cost of living increase for the wages for the crossing guards, because it had been 2 years and they had not received an increase during that time frame. So it is a contract for a 1 year, let me see, June 1st, yeah, a 1 year with an additional year, I believe, that they can opt for. 2 more 1 years, I'm sorry. Yes, you're correct. So in any case, this has been a very successful endeavor. We have saved having our police officers manning school posts, and it has truly been beneficial also, because then our police department can be enforcing traffic around the schools instead of crossing. And I think the most recent information I received was that it was only 2 school posts in a school year they had to cover, whereas prior they were covering multiples up to, a majority of them on certain days. So,
any questions, comments? No? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I got one quick question.
Okay.
So the cost of living, is that assuming that the cost of living allowance is assuming that all of the crossing guards are returning individuals?
Right.
correct, correct. Yeah, it's a apparently their hourly minimum base rate used to be $17.70, and it went up to $18.05. It's about 1.9%.
But it's the same individuals, like a new person isn't bumping into the higher price?
Well, that's the minimum. That's the minimum base rate. And then so after that, they probably get more as it goes up.
Can we find that out?
I will.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, the next one is for a replacement of carpeting in the police department. The carpeting in the police department is the same carpeting that was here when they first moved in 2005. It started to become threadbare, it buckles in some places, it has fraying edges, and many are missing the saddle between the tile and the carpet, along with the newly polished hallway floors, which they have in the police department. It would be nice to have improved appearance with new carpeting. This is under state contract, Brothers Carpet and Flooring of Hackensack, and the amount of $31,850. It is in the capital account.
Okay, questions, comments? Sold carpeting. Moving on.
Okay. The next one is for a professional services contract for a professional planner for affordable housing planning consultant. This is Elizabeth McManus, who's worked with, I know with Mr. Rogers, with our assigned, what's it called, court master, for our affordable housing. And so this is her contract for the year 2018.
Okay. Do you want to talk about this, Matt, at all? Because we've
Only if
worked
you want. I mean, we are hopefully going to resolve what is the declaratory judgment action sometime during 2018. We are still in settlement negotiations with the Fair Share Housing Center, dealing with basically trying to determine how to approach future zoning in the village and the components of overlay zones, which properties should be considered. We've got those are basically the last two items that need to be resolved. I don't think the judge is going to give us a lot of time to resolve them, but we hope to have it done sometime in the next 3-4 months. So we may be back here before the council with regard to a discussion on a potential settlement with Fair Share and seeking court approval of that settlement. So
I just want to say that Beth McManus is she's remarkable. She's top in her field, and she certainly is an area of expertise that she's been very helpful for us.
Yeah, she's been a big benefit to the town.
She's been a real benefit. Yep. Okay. Moving on.
Okay. The next is a lease for the Pease Library upper levels. As you may know, the main level and the balcony of Pease Library is rented out currently to Ridgewood Medical Media. They've been there since 2009. Their lease expires on May 12th, 2018. Ridgewood Library went out with an RFP, and they did receive the sole bidder, which again was Ridgewood Medical Media. The proposal has been examined by a trustee of the library, the administrative staff, and it was approved by the library board. They had proposed an initial lease of 5 years with 2 3-year renewable options. Mr. Rogers, in reviewing the contract, has recommended that it be an initial lease of 3 years with 1 3-year renewal option. And Ridgewood Medical Media is willing to go with that. So they would like to be able to approve this so that they can enter into the new lease with Ridgewood Medical Media as of May 13th.
Okay, great. Any questions, comments on that? It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, and the final item under policy is amendment to the village code, backyard bands and music. We have a section called nuisances enumerated, which is section 172-618 of the Ridgewood Village Code. And it basically says that unnecessary blowing of whistles, sirens and horns, and ringing of bells at any time, and the loud playing of radios after 11 p.m. Is something that should not exist. Any radio shall be deemed to be playing loudly if the noise from the same is of sufficient volume to disturb the sleep of persons in the immediate vicinity. What the recommendation is to add, in addition to the loud playing of radios, it would say bands or music, and then any radio, bands, or music shall be deemed to be playing loudly. This would allow for individuals who may have backyard parties with perhaps a DJ, or if there's a wedding, or something of that nature. This way, it would encompass the bands and the music being played.
Yeah, so this is born out of a resident that reached out over this because the code actually was so, it didn't address this. But the question, I guess, is whether or not we want to say on certain nights, because we certainly don't want somebody to have a backyard band on a Wednesday night or whatever. And I think that the question, Heather, was that I think that the individual went to the police department to get a permit, and there was no permit process, and then they were told, well, if somebody just calls in on a Saturday night and you've paid for this band and they call in at 8 o'clock, then you can actually have your whole thing shut down. So whether or not we want to restrict this, I mean, anybody could have a band on a Friday night or any night of the week, and if nobody calls, who cares? But on maybe one night where we actually have that you can go to 11, so if somebody does call, and I don't know, it's up to everyone else. It just kind of adds to that piece that you have some comfort level that you can go to a certain time without being shut down. We're good? Okay, I guess. So they want the band. So can we, should we?
So we're going to stipulate nights or no? Or it could be any
We should just
night?
maybe say, I don't know, maybe should we do Friday and Saturday night, or just say Saturday night? Because you could still have like a Friday night thing, if somebody doesn't call, then you can go until whatever time. But at least this, we have a night that you know that you can go until 11, and I think that's what we.
So what do you want to do? That's my question.
So just leave it as Saturday night? Does that make sense?
That's up to the
Okay,
council.
everybody seems
Is that
to be
good?
saying
Saturday night?
So it's Saturday night, band night in town.
And obviously, as the mayor indicated, it could be any night of the week, and as long as it's, not called in, that can go on.
Right, this just is a comfort level for somebody that's going to pay for a band that they know they're not going to get shut down at 8 o'clock, and after they've gone through all this, like wedding plans and everything else, so.
So we just have to be careful that it's not too subjective, because once you leave it on just someone's subjectivity of whether it's too loud or anything like that, the ordinance can be defeated as being vague, and...
That's your...
Well, it already says, if the noise from same is of sufficient volume to disturb the sleep of persons in the immediate vicinity.
Well, but who's going to determine that? And that's one of the problems that you have, so you just got to watch the wording.
Yeah. Okay, that's how it exists, so if
But
we've got to change it, we have to change the existing.
We may have to.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so we'll do that, so we can introduce that, all right. Good.
Okay, so next is our manager's report. I just want to mention that Earth Day was a wonderful day in Ridgewood. I hope a lot of you got out to see everything that was there. There were a lot of booths. A lot of our staff was there. As was mentioned, recycling was the focus. It also was joined by the Daffodil Festival, by the Ridgewood Conservancy for Public Lands. It was held at Memorial Park at Venice Square, a beautiful day. And families, I saw families there. I arrived there later in the day, and it was very crowded, and then I was told that earlier in the day it was packed. I thought it was packed when I got there, so it was really wonderful, and I just want to thank everyone who helped to make it a great success. As I said, we have many village departments there. We had engineering, health, recycling, water. So there were many departments, a lot of giveaways, a lot of different kinds of booths, so it was really nice. The League of Women Voters candidate debate is this coming Monday, April 30th at 7:30 p.m. right here in the courtroom. It will be broadcast live on Cablevision Channel 77 and Verizon Channel 34. But anyone wishing to come, please come and enjoy it here in person on that evening. I want to remind everyone that Election Day for the municipal election is Tuesday, May 8th. The polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. You should receive a sample ballot in the mail if you're a registered voter approximately a week before the election. 4 candidates are running for 2 village council seats. The budget newsletter is being prepared and will be mailed to all residents sometime next week. The public hearing for the 2018 Village of Ridgewood budget will be held Wednesday, May 9th at the public meeting, which begins at 8 p.m., held here in the courtroom. Spring Fling, each year Ridgewood High School students hold a prom-type dance for senior citizens. This is a free event that includes all seniors in Ridgewood. It took place tonight at Ridgewood High School, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is the village supported the event by providing transportation to our senior bus. So I think it allowed some of the seniors to get there in an easier way than driving themselves. I also do want to mention the turf field. I just got an update. It's going to be replaced. As you may know, the council did vote to award a contract, and the work should begin approximately on the week of May 7th, and it should run through the entire month of May, and should be done by the end of May, beginning of June. It's weather dependent and some of it, but in this way it'll be ready certainly for the start of the day camp, which is near the latter part of June, and also for any summer activities, and obviously for the fall and going forward. So we want to thank the council for approving that contract so that our sports teams and our camp can use that field again. That's it.
Great, thank you. Councilman Voigt?
Planning Board met on the 17th of April. We approved the minor subdivision off of Franklin Turnpike, which is, as one goes out of downtown Hohokus towards Route 17, off to the left, it's for 2 homes. The Library Board of Trustees met last night. A couple of items of note. The Friends of the Ridgewood Library had their author luncheon today. It was attended by well over 400 people. It was at Seasons in Washington Township. The author was Nicole Krause of Forest Dark. Kudos go to Paul McCarthy, who's the president of the Friends, as well as Rebecca Rubenstein, for putting on a very well-attended and interesting luncheon. The monies were raised. They go to the Friends of the Library and also to the library itself. The library is working on digitizing local newspapers, the Ridgewood News, from the years 1891 to 2011, so they're going to be easily searchable when that's done. It's going to be hopefully done in the next 3 or 4 months. Upcoming presentations for the library. There's a presentation by Vic Aurora, who is one of the Board of Trustees members, on data breaches of Equifax and Facebook. Vic is an IT professional. It's on May 1st, 7 p.m. It's in the library auditorium. There's an upcoming Library Foundation clam bake on Saturday, June 16th, 2018 at the Ridgewood Country Club. It's a fundraiser again for the library, and there are tickets on sale that are online, and I think they're $200 a person. So that's it. Thank you.
Williams, okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add to what Village Manager Heather Maylander said about Earth Day. It was a great day in the park. Nancy Bigos with the Parks Department did a really great job. Vic Amoruso did an excellent job with setup. And I'd just like to send out a really special thank you to George Wolfson, who has really been a driving force behind Earth Day celebration. He's involved in all the meetings. He's been doing it for years. I met him there that morning at 7:30 in the morning to make sure that we had the vendors know which spot they had to go to. And you know, George has been he's been a tremendous asset on many of the committees that I serve on. So I just want to say thank you to everyone involved.
Thank you. Councilman Walsh.
Thank you. So citizen safety, got a bunch of new business. The Share the Keys program, Sheila Brogan, a Board of Ed member, reported that on April 19th, there was a conference which attracted approximately 75 participants, high school age drivers and parents or guardians. Compliments given to the Ridgewood High School staff for organizing, coordinating the program aimed at improving safety and skills of young drivers with the support and involvement of adult family members. Our HSA liaison, Melinda Cronk, reported the annual Crossing Guard Appreciation Breakfast is scheduled for May 3rd at 9 a.m. in the Education Center, and that's sponsored by Federated HSA. The May Citizen Safety meeting is actually going to be canceled so that everybody can attend the Living to 100 conference, which is scheduled for May 17th. It's actually full, and there's been a wait list established, but it's going to be obviously living to 100. It's going to be a program discussing those things and not only the health benefits, but also how you get around, mobility and things like that. Let me see. Signal Division, they're going to be working on the mounting of signs for the traffic control devices. Some residents are reporting difficulty viewing the signage. Let's see, some of this stuff is from the month before as well. Nope, I think this is all from my last month. And then I just have Arts Council. So we have our next Artist Talk, which is actually going to be part of the Guild's Film Festival. So it's going to be on May 10th. It's Scott Rosenfeld is going to be our Artist Talk as part of the series. It's going to be at 7:30 p.m. We're going to have one of the theaters is going to be our theater for this talk. Scott Rosenfeld is best known for Home Alone, Mystic Pizza, Teen Wolf, Smoke Signals, and Extremities. So it's going to be very exciting. Obviously, the film festival is going to be on, and we encourage everybody to attend the other events as well at the film festival, but this is specifically for the Arts Council, and you can purchase tickets at Mango Jam if you would like a $10 ticket to attend.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have.
Councilman.
Just adding to comments from the village manager regarding the Maple Field. Obviously, it wasn't an easy decision to bring the field offline, but I think we made the right choice. Very happy with the work that was done to get this field up and running very quickly. Nancy Bigos, Dan Cramblett, and Rich Brooks working very hard, against a tight deadline, and also working with the different sports groups to make sure that we're fulfilling the maximum amount of needs for the field. There's 5 different sports that are played on that field, and when you count the co-ed, you're talking about 8 different programs, and not to mention that we use it for the summer camp, for grading camp. So very happy that it's moving forward, and actually it's coming in a little bit earlier than I thought in terms of completion. So just one thing to add, the Central Business District Business Forum, we're having our second one on Monday, May 14, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. right here at Village Hall. I encourage that all our business owners join us. I know that the last time around we did it on a Wednesday. We're hoping to get the Monday crowd in, maybe more restaurateurs. But we had a very good discussion last time around. I think it was very open. I think a lot of good things came from it. You know, the fact that we're discussing our sign ordinances and other different aspects of the ordinances that control the business flow in Central Business District. I think it was a good outcome from that. And just the follow-on communication that we've had with the business owners since then, kind of establishing the line of communication. I know I just recently shared an email with the village manager about a concern that one of the businesses had, and it's opened up the dialogue. So I think that was probably the best outcome. So that's what I have.
I actually think it was one of the best meetings we had ever, because all the business community was there, and it was just a lot of incredible input. So I don't have any liaison reports, but I do have an announcement to make, and hopefully I'm going to get through it and not have a little breakdown here. So I don't remember how long ago it was that I received a notice in my mailbox upstairs on the 5th floor from the Bergen County Historic Preservation Office requesting recommendations for candidates to be the recipients of the Bergen County Historic Preservation Awards for historic preservation. And at the moment I received that in my mailbox, I walked right across the hall and asked everyone to lean in and to help recommend Isabella Altano for the award. Some of you may know or remember that Isabella was a former planning board member and was a planning board member and a member of Historic Preservation Commission, and Isabella also worked tirelessly to preserve the historic Shedler House, one of the last remaining Dutch frame colonial homes in the area. And so everybody sent in letters, and we sent in Isabella's bio and a ton of information, and so many people stepped up, and Jana Fricke was absolutely wonderful and organized everything. And we just learned that Isabella Altano has been selected to receive the 2018 Bergen County Historic Preservation Award posthumously, and for her being cited in the category of preservation leadership. And we think that this is one of the greatest honors that we could have for Isabella. And I got through it. So with that, we will go back to public comment.
Before we begin, I think maybe just because of what we went through earlier, I should just make some comments about the quorum and the way that our ordinances say everything should proceed.
Thank you.
We've dealt with this before, we have addressed this issue before, but it's probably worthwhile saying again. Under Section 320 of our code, it says, any person who shall disturb the peace, make impertinent, slanderous remarks, or conduct himself in a boisterous manner while addressing the council shall be barred from further audience before the council, except if the speaker submits to the proper order of these rules. Permission for them to continue can be granted by a majority vote. It does say that the comments in the way of addressing the council must be in a manner that's not boisterous or at least disruptive to the council. There can be comments that are critical. It's not as if you can't say anything bad, everything's got to be positive, but the manner and the decorum and the way that the speech is delivered is the important part, and whether or not it's considered to be disturbing. So I think that aspect of our ordinances can be enforced, and I just ask to make sure everybody just maintains proper decorum as we go through this process and deal with public comments.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Okay.
Ray Weber, once again, 235 South Irving. I ran away a little quickly last time. I owe a great debt of gratitude to Heather Maylander. I don't know if you know who I am. You've gotten emails from me. And I have to say, what a doll. Such friendliness and respect, and she actually gets things done. I went through a nightmare with leaf removal and this whole summons process with your predecessor. And what I had to address with you, whether it was a leaf removal or those ongoing snow removal issues, always a pleasant person who is ready to respect whatever I have to say and help. And she was dealing with someone who was upset. So bless you and thank you. And after listening to some of the things that occurred before, I want to also say a personal thank you while I'm standing here to Councilman Hache, because your robocall was the first robocall I think that I've ever listened to from beginning to end. I found it very comforting after the very disturbing mailing that I had received earlier in the week. And as, again, a 34-year resident, I just have to say the level of vitriol that I have witnessed in this recent race for 2 seats by certain campaigns and certain supporters of that campaign is unnerving, disheartening. It's something that I hope as a citizen I can be somehow instrumental with my neighbors to never let happen again, because it's beyond an embarrassment. It's just a daily dark cloud hanging over people who have to feel that compelled to answer these things every day on social media or with neighbors. I actually take phone calls from people that in my neighborhood that who would like to talk about local things going on. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And it's been really horrible. And I guess what ensued after I left this podium, it kind of brought something to mind while I was sitting there. And I was thinking about a certain email that I was able to see that regarding a term used to describe individuals who come to council meetings. And the term is attack dogs. I don't know if I'm allowed to attribute that to someone, so I'm not going to. But I will say that I was insulted when I saw that. But now, actually, I think I don't have a reason to be insulted. I think that maybe that was directed at those two gentlemen, not two men who got up after me, because I was unnerved just sitting a few feet away from that, especially that loud sound that came from behind me in the middle of whatever was going on. And I owe you and you and you a lot of credit for sitting through that and being willing to serve, because frankly, I had a hard time just sitting across the aisle from it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Again.
Thank you.
Rorik Halaby, 374 Evergreen Place. For the record, the terrific event that took place last Sunday, the full name is the Daffodil Festival and Earth Day Fair. And how sad for Mr. Seaton not to give credit to the one person who made it happen, and it happens to be my wife, Cynthia. Earth Day was going nowhere until Cynthia and the Conservancy came in and really tapped the talent of the village to really make it happen. It's very, very sad. You might have a vendetta against me, but give credit where it's due. This is one. Secondly, the mayor called me a liar, and I'm not sure what the rules and regulations for the town are for a mayor to call a resident expressing his strongly held views as a liar. That's okay. Coming from you, it's a compliment. Now, as far as the church, I never said, and you put words in my mouth, that the church, it was a church raffle. I never said that. Mr. Lehman never said that. He made very, very clear it was the Glen Rock School, which is associated with the church. It was Mr. Hache who then talked about, and I'll read his words, to accuse Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church, where I'm a parishioner, of somehow colluding with Susan Knudsen, was a new law in politics. I never said that, and Mr. Lehman never said that. I never said anything about the thing being any collusion. The only thing I said before, a year ago, and I'll say it again, the right thing to do with a charity like that is to give the money back. This is my point. Now, as far as the discussion that took place between Mr. Voigt and Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, the way I understood it, I'm no lawyer, is that you cannot use any anti-nepotism law to discriminate against people on account of familiar relationships. So for instance, if Ms. Maylander has a niece, I don't mean to pick on her, but to use as an example, who decides to apply, good for the niece, and I think that she should be given every chance. However, I'm sure that Heather, if I could call you Heather, would recuse herself, announce to everyone that her niece is applying, and make sure she is totally out of the picture as far as making any decision. Now, the point I'm trying to raise, and I'm not a lawyer, so bear with me, and I think this is what Mr. Voigt was trying to say, was that there is no state law that says a municipality in Ridgewood has to offer its residents priority over other people. It's a choice of the village.
No.
But, now, Glen Rock does not have that. Other towns don't have it. I would like someone, a lawyer, to tell me, is there a state law that requires Ridgewood to give priority to its residents? Now, my understanding is that there is not. Now, if that's the case, why was there a debate then why was there a debate on whether this ordinance should have been changed? If nothing could have been done about it, then why was there any kind of a debate? My point to the mayor, and again, I do not in any way, and I've said it 100 times, I have nothing against your three boys. Time and time again when I appeared here, I say thank you for serving. I'm sure they'll do good policemen and good firefighters. I have no problem with that. My problem is with someone on the council not disclosing that one of their children is on the list. Because what happens, and I got a listing of test results, and I'm sure these are all fine people, including the mayor's boys, but number 1 was Kevin De Palma, number 2, Carl Scarpa, number 3, Kenny Barroso, Anthony Danici, Matthew Andrula, Douglas Bush, Wyatt Mute, number 8, Jack Knutson. I'm sure Jack Knutson will make a great officer, but yet the 7 people ahead of him, why aren't they there?
So can I, Mr. Hallaby, can you just stay 1 minute?
Yeah.
I just want to explain something. 2014, and I'm going to tell you that in Mr. Lehman's email and in his mailer, he directs people to go to a part of a videotape. He directs them where to start the videotape. And he inserts language, he puts language there that I never said. The truth of it is, if you just went back, you would hear Roberta say, this discussion excludes police and fire public safety. We were talking about civilian jobs. When I made that statement, I was not speaking about police and fire. I was talking about jobs like clerk typist and receptionist and mechanics, civilian positions. The minutes, the official minutes are there. And I feel bad if somebody has misled you to believe something that's not true. But the fact is that nothing was hidden. Roberta Sonnenfeld had a certified list from the state before I was ever elected. I couldn't keep a secret. The deputy mayor knew it. All council members knew it. There was no secret. It's a public list. But I'm going to let Mr. Rogers speak to the.
No, can I respond to your thing?
I don't want to be mad at you.
I'm not mad at you. I have nothing
mad
against
at
you.
each other. Go ahead.
But let me mention one other thing.
Sure.
When you talk about my group consists of one person, that's me. I'm a highly, highly independent thinker. In fact, I can't even include my wife in my group. I just happen to be supportive of the other people. Why? Because, very frankly, I love this country, I love this village. I look at the swamp in Washington, and I see a microcosm of a swamp in Ridgewood. The similarities between what's happening in Washington, what's happening here, are scary.
So, okay. And I just want to say your time.
I'm just going to try and respond
so
to
let's just let Matt talk to it. But okay. Can I just say one thing? I agree there's a swamp atmosphere, but it's not from here. We're just trying to give the truth. So we're trying to give facts, we're trying to give the legal information, and we're trying to, I'm going to send you all the minutes. You'll see exactly what I was saying. So let Mr. Rogers speak
But to call me a liar, you know what a liar is? A liar is someone who willfully and knowingly misstates the facts.
Well,
Mr. Hallaby, can I respond?
Go ahead.
You brought up a couple of legal questions, and I just want to try and further clarify them if I can. Yeah. My memo basically reveals and shows that civil service, is designed to prevent familiar relationships having an impact on the hiring process. Tries to get the best person. If you read the civil service statutes and regulations, they talk about preferences given for disabled, preference given for veterans. Also recognizes that municipalities can have residency preferences, but the residency preferences in Ridgewood were here, from what I understand, before I was the village attorney. And the thing is that from the standpoint of being able to change the civil service regulations and what they call bypass or jump over somebody, if you don't fit the criteria to jump over somebody, you can't do it. So I think that was the point that I was trying to make, is that not only do you have to pay attention to the civil service, but the threshold criteria for the job is set before the test is even given, and the the abilities or the certain aspects of the job that are pertinent to the position and the test are also stated at the time of the announcement of the test. So all those things are done by the state, and from a nepotism standpoint, from a familiar relationship, that is not a criteria that can be used to either bypass or jump somebody. If I remember right, my recollection is a little bit off, that those first 7 out of many of them, and recognize one name who went to the Bergen County Police Department instead, and somebody else went somewhere else. So people go and they take the test and they're put on the list by the state, but that doesn't mean that they're the ones that are going to be hired, because they go elsewhere. They take another job. They may not want to work in Ridgewood. They want to work for the county or do something different. So, so that's the way it works, and I'm trying to see if we can clarify it. But.
And I appreciate that, but yet again, nothing.
I don't want to interrupt because you had your 5 minutes.
I know, but you interrupted me, and
I'm going to stop
please.
because we have to, in just the name of time, so I don't want to cut you off, but we can have a discussion. I'll send you all the documents. I want you to read it.
I have the documents, and I heard you. You were talking about the police. You were not talking about the non-police.
No, I never said it.
I heard you.
All right,
I
you're
never
wrong,
said
Mr.
it.
Halby. Your time is over. Please.
Okay.
Are you leaving?
Okay.
You owe an apology. You owe Cynthia an apology.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And actually, you know what, and thank you to Cynthia and the Conservancy for all the work on the Daffodil Festival.
And by the way, you should see the work that's being done behind the scenes.
Please, Mr. Halby, you're going way over 5 minutes. It's way over 5 minutes
All right,
now.
thank you. Thank you. You got your extra minute that Russ, you had done. Thanks. Good. All right, thank you.
Wolf's clothing.
Thank you.
You look through the minutes. Well, what can I say? I don't.
Hans-Jürgen Lehmann, 234 Union Street. I'd like to commend the village for moving ahead with the garage on the Hudson Street lot. I think it was a very informative presentation, and I felt encouraged that maybe somewhere not too far down the road something would be happening there that would be a benefit to the village. My second observation is that when you speak from the dais, it seems like you get to treat it like a bully pulpit, okay? When my name was dragged through the mud, I didn't hear you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, ever shout point of order, okay? Now, we got a little heated and it got carried away because I feel the exchange, certainly in the initial discussion that we had, puts me at a disadvantage because there are certain things that I cannot say, but there are certain things that other people can say about me. So let me straighten out a couple of things here, okay? First of all, I have never objected to the mayor's children being civil servants in the village of Ridgewood. The process was properly handled, people were certified, they applied for the position, and they were given the position. If they hadn't gotten the position, someone else would have gotten the position. It would have cost the village the same amount of money, no matter what. People who object about the amount of money that is being paid, I think that's a fallacious argument, okay? But my objection is that early in the tenure of the councilwoman, she voted on a civil service-related ordinance, an affirmative vote. And my only objection is that that vote, she should have recused herself. That's it. I have nothing more to say about that than that, okay? The second issue here is Mr. Hache, who puts out a robocall that is about as full of falsehoods. Now, I'm not acting. Don't open your eyes. I am not working on behalf of a campaign. That is not what I'm doing. I'm not attached to those other people. I am speaking for myself because I am upset and deeply disappointed by the performance that I'm seeing on this council. Mr. Hache, Councilman Hache, at no point would I ever say that a house of worship in this town would collude with anyone on this dais for any particular reason. I just don't think it's possible. For you to use the word collude, which I did not use, okay, and for you to accuse me of using the word collusion, I think is totally and egregiously incorrect. My objection is to the optics. A sitting public official takes money, any amount of money. I don't care what it is. I don't care who on the dais it is. It is a very bad optic. It looks terrible for the village of Ridgewood. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you took $5 from somebody. You just don't do that. I spent 35 years working for the Superior Court of New Jersey. You got my answer to the robocall that I sent, that you put out. I think you got to read it, correct?
Well, there's no questions.
Yeah, no
Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, I assume you read it, okay? And I am painfully familiar with how civil service works. I understand it only too well, okay? I'm also painfully familiar with the issue of ethics and optics. Sometimes the way things appear is as bad as the way things are. And that's all that I want to say. Thank you.
Hans, before you leave, I'm going to be very clear on one thing.
I'm not
No,
listening to
I'm
you.
going, okay,
I'm
that's
leaving.
all right. I'm going to respond. I did not take money. Let's be very clear that the suggestion, and now I'm responding, and before we drag people's names through the mud, we should probably ask them, at least ask them to respond before we email to 1 million people, dragging someone's name through the mud. Come on up. Good evening.
Good evening. Jim McCarthy, 153 Hope Street. There's an old country saying, it's never a good idea to wrestle a pig in the mud because you get dirty and the pig likes it. Generally, I try to adhere to that, country saying, except when the pig mails the mud to my front door. I thought that the inferences contained in the mailer and the email were stunningly, first of all, riddled with falsehoods, right? The inferences were clear and unmistakable. And I think another saying takes over, which is see something, say something. So Councilman Hache, right, I know it was a difficult thing to do and out of character for somebody who is not up for election to wade in. But I applaud you for objecting, right, to something that you thought was morally repugnant for the implication, if it's a random game of chance, as I believe it is, right, then the mayor took nothing, right, she won something, and, it's the same as being hit by lightning, right, it's got that same kind of randomness to it. So I see nothing but mean-spirited, false, unnamed sources and reports. If you go to Jamboree and you ask them, do you have any record of the mayor profiting over the course of her 10-plus years, the answer that they will give you, and I am quite confident, is no. They have no record of that. So those cascading seeds of doubt, right, are just bile and poison, right, put out for the purpose of discrediting. Today it's the mayor, tomorrow it could be anybody else. So, as I said, thank you for trying to set a higher bar for the conduct and the discourse in the village. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, Greg Brown, 444 Linwood Ave in Ridgewood. I always say thank you for your service, all of you. I certainly mean that. I'd like to segue a little bit maybe into some village business. First, I want to say I certainly think that the Hudson Street garage, what we've seen and all that is the nicest of all the iterations I've seen to date. I especially like the fact that you have the opportunity to maybe convert into retail at a certain point if you so see fit. One little thing I would say, if there's any possibility to not put meters back on the street parking and do some sort of the paying kiosk, maybe for both sides, would be awesome. And then secondly, and I'm not sure if it's the right time with sort of the ongoing litigation that we have with the other towns for Ridgewood Water and all that, but I'd like to bring up again as we get into spring and summer the fact that we seemingly have more restrictive ordinances for what we can do with water than the other towns have. As far as I know, they haven't quite passed anything yet that restricts them the same ways, so I would just like to suggest that again.
Thanks, Greg. And thanks for keeping it to village business. That was a little refreshing.
Good evening, Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Also like to talk about village business.
I'd like to say that I agree with Councilwoman Walsh regarding the smart water, or the water smart. I also got my bill this week, and very interestingly, my bill was for $100.61. Yours was for $100.71. I received my electronic notice before I received the paper bill. I paid it immediately electronically, and when I got the paper bill, just like you did, Councilwoman, I felt that there was enough information on the paper bill for all of my needs. Showed me what my consumption was over the past couple of months, and seemed to be accurate, so I paid it. $500,000, I don't see spending $500,000 for more information. How much did I use? How much do I owe? That's basically all I really need to know. The other piece of village business that I like to discuss is I'm somewhat disturbed about this proposal regarding bands. And this is my concern. 11 o'clock at night, yeah, as an adult, maybe many of us go to sleep at 11 o'clock at night, but we are the grandparents of a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old. And there have been occasions in our neighborhood where people have bands that are playing very, very, very loud. Bands can get loud, particularly if they have some good amplification systems. So having a band play until 11 o'clock at night, who determines whether it's loud or not? If you're right next door to some of these people who've got a rock band playing in their backyard by their pool, 11 o'clock is kind of late if you've got children you're trying to get to bed. Now, granted, if there are nothing but adults in the neighborhood, that's one thing, but I don't know many neighborhoods in Ridgewood that have nothing but adults in them. The reason that people move to Ridgewood is for the schools, and there are a lot of school children in Ridgewood, a lot of kids who need to get to bed at night, whether it's a Saturday night, a Sunday night, or a Monday night, they need to get to bed. We do not keep our 4-year-old and our 8-year-old grandchildren up until 11 o'clock at night when they're sleeping over at our house. So I would strongly object to having this business that you've got 1 or 2 nights a week where you can have a band play until 11 o'clock at night. It doesn't make a difference how loud they are. That's no good. There's got to be some decibel level put on this. There's got to be something that the police can do if it is really disturbing. It can't be just a free pass to have your band play until 11 o'clock at night. So I encourage you, when you're taking a look at this thing, before you pass anything, think about the children. As they say at the Board of Ed, do it for the children. You got to get them to bed at night, and a band with guitars and trumpets and whatever next door to you in the summer with the windows open and stuff, just is not going to cut it.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Boyd.
Hello, Gail McCarthy, 153 Hope Street. Number one, thank you to all of you for serving on the council and everybody else who's here. Number two, thank you for presenting a very nice compromise to what was presented a few years back and argued over and worked hard to prevent being built. I think it's a very nice design. I think lots of people will be excited about it. It's a true compromise, and I appreciate that very much. As far as the design goes, I don't want to bring anybody down, but I am concerned. A young man from Northern Highlands jumped off of the Garden State Plaza parking garage from the 5th level. He's in the hospital. He did try to commit suicide. So I ask, when you're looking at this, and it's an open level on the top floor, to please consider putting those railings that curve out so that it makes it difficult for anybody to do something like that. So I'm just concerned about that. Thank you so much for everything.
Hi, Lorraine Reynolds, 550 Windermere Avenue. I'm going back. I just want to say, I mean, a few minutes ago, we all heard Mr. Lehman say that he never said you voted on police and fire, blah, blah, blah. I just want to read something from his email that he sent to I don't know how many people. In the summer of 2014, the council was considering changes to its hiring practices. One of the questions considered was whether Ridgewood should maintain a residency requirement for police officers and firefighters at the point of hire, or open its hiring process to a larger, more competitive pool of candidates. Knutson advocated strongly that Ridgewood jobs should be given only to Ridgewood residents, particularly when it comes to public safety positions. So, case closed. He lied then, he's lying now. What I listened to the tape. What everybody needs to is listen to the full tape. It's 23 minutes long. You got to listen to the whole thing. Starts out with our previous village manager saying we are not taught, public safety, police and fire are excluded. They go on, they have the debate whether there should be a residency requirement. They're talking about non-competitive civil service civilian jobs. That's what the mayor was advocating for. And then even at the end, our previous mayor, Paul Aronson, says, I am glad we have residency requirements for public safety. I am glad. Those were his words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I just want to quote, and I might be paraphrasing slightly, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but earlier this evening, Councilman Hache said something that really bears repeating. Just because you have the right to do something does not mean it is the right thing to do. I thought that was perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. With that, we close public session and take a resolution to go into closed session. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on April 25th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter on the agenda can be reached, and that said closed session be held in the caucus room of the Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. Be it further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session are limited to personnel matters to include Department of Public Works, Fire Department, boards and committees, and contract negotiations to include property acquisition, Green Acres diversion, and legal to include affordable housing. These matters are allowable in their NJSA 10:4-12 at sec. Be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matters have been deemed completed by resolution of the Village Council. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.